within all the SDGs. In the meantime of the pandemic, the need for empowering aid that enables youth and adults to cope with the pandemic and rebuild their lives with dignity will also be discussed. On behalf of ASBAY Executive Council, the Secretary General, and all the staff, I would like to thank all of you for participating and engaging in this webinar series. The Executive Council would like also to thank the Secretary General Maria Khan and all the staff, Anita Bukart, Tia, Cecilia Terrano, Sobrat, and all others who has been working so hard to organizing this event. Have a great discussion, everyone. Thank you. Anita, back to you.
Thank you so much, Nani, for your warm words of welcome and also for setting the context of the webinar series and specifically today's webinar. Now, this webinar includes a wide range of participants. We were very happy to receive over 80 registrations from 18 countries. Now, as a way for participants to self-introduce themselves, we would like to launch a short poll. So this is to invite you to respond to the 2 questions in the poll and also respond to one question that will be posed on the chat box. So you can answer to the chat box question at your leisure, but please answer the poll questions as soon as the poll is launched. So we appreciate the diversity of participants in this room. Yeah, can we have the poll? Yes. We're keeping the poll open for a couple of seconds more. Okay. Yeah, I think we can end the polling. And if results can be shared. Okay. So very happy that we have participants from across the region, from all the sub-regions, that is South Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, Pacific, Central Asia. And it is a group that is an Asia Pacific group because I don't see any participants from beyond Asia Pacific. So it's a good representation from the Asia Pacific region. And in this webinar, we have participants representing their NGOs and CSOs. We have participants from regional organizations, also from the university, the government, and others, which would include consultants, media persons, and others as well. So very happy, and I think it's a good diversity that we have here, and therefore we expect that we'll have meaningful outcomes from our collective deliberation in the webinar today. So thank you very much. And the question in the chat box is open, and we can also view the responses from our fellow participants. And it'll all be compiled into the report. So we will have, we'll recognize your response in the reports as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, can we stop the poll? Yeah. Okay, I think taking further the context that was set by Nani, the importance of adult learning and education, which is ALE, cannot be overemphasized for individuals and communities, especially those living in the margins of society, to equip themselves to claim a life of dignity based on human rights and social justice. Now, within the Sustainable Development Goals, ASPE pushes for policy and program development and financing for ALE, not only in SDG 4, but as a strategy embedded in implementation of all SDGs. The webinar today on Regional Report on VNR Analysis from an Adult Learning and Education Lens is structured as a regional follow-up event to the HLPF and contribution to the 2020 Global Week to Act for SDGs. It aims to build on CSO momentum and engagements with government during the VNR process. We begin the discussion today with inputs from our first two speakers, followed by an open forum. I request you to keep your chat box and question and answer box active. If you listen to as you listen to the speakers, post your comments in the chat box and questions for the speakers in the Q&A box. During the open forum, the speakers will respond to the questions posed to them. So our first speaker is Johan Hillman, the Regional Director of DVV International's Regional Office for Southeast Asia. He's based in Lao PDR. He's an ardent advocate of adult learning and education, and he continues to provide leadership in development cooperation for community and adult education initiatives in Southeast Asia. DVV International is a long-standing partner and fellow traveler of ASBE in advancing ALE in the Asia-Pacific region. Johan will be sharing with us the role and potential of ALE to reach the SDGs. Over to you, Johan Hillman.
Hello to you all. Thank you very much, Anita. Thank you very much for inviting me to this event. And it's actually a great pleasure to at least have the feeling of being all together with you in this one seminar. Although in these difficult times, of course, it's not easy to get in touch as before. But in this way, I think it's very nice. And I would also like to express my sincere appreciation for all the efforts of ASPE. In bringing across your and our messages in these difficult times through a lot of online events. I think in this regard, you're really doing a great job. So I'm just asking now, do you have my presentation? Are you able to put it on the screen? That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. As Anita said, I will have a quick look at the role and the potential of adult learning and education to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And I will structure my brief presentation in a way that I will start with two quotes first. Then I will give you a bit of a background on what these key messages were about, what they come from, and then I will talk about particular SDGs and their connection to ALE. So if we can start with the next slide, I will start with one quote relating ALE to particularly SDG 4, which reads, "ALE is indispensable for securing the right to education. As it caters for a central and extensive phase of people's lives, it is a key component of the concept of lifelong learning. Through its comprehensive nature, ALE can prepare learners across all ages for a fast-changing environment as demanded by the Education Agenda 2030. So this is a first quote emphasizing the role of adult learning and education within SDG 4, within our education goal. And then I have a second example for a key message of ours that will be on the next slide, and that relates to SDG 16. I will tell you more about SDG 16 in the coming minutes. So in the form of community learning centers or other local structures, ALE is a key source of community empowerment and mobilization. It helps adults to become active citizens who can take part in more transparent, inclusive and effective decision-making processes, and supports refugees in their social, cultural and economic integration. So with this key message, we try to emphasize the importance of ALE in reaching another SDG, which is SDG 16, and to really try, just in a nutshell, to give some emphasis and to explain more about the role of ALE in one other key messages. Now, where do these key messages come from? What is their meaning? If we can have a next slide, you'll better be able to understand where these quotes come from, and you'll better understand the context, because of course now I have just taken them out of the context a bit. Last year in May, DVV International had its 50th anniversary, and on the occasion of this anniversary we had a conference which basically dealt with the topic of the role of adult learning and education for reaching the SDGs. And we particularly focused in that conference on the SDGs that were under review at last year's high-level political forum in New York. Anita was and Nani were mentioning this year's forum. Now, of course, there were different goals under review, but of course, we are always trying, and that's been emphasized already, how we can further lobby for the importance of adult learning and education. And of course, we have to take the momentum of every event that is there. And then last year, the SDGs under review, of course, were a great foundation for doing this advocacy work. So we tried to formulate key messages, about 4 or 5 or 6 of them for every SDG under review, to actually feed this into the review process, and to also organize a side event with ASPE, with IKE, with URL, to further promote the importance of adult learning and education. Basically, the same goal as the VNR also have. And we really tried to emphasize the interlinkages and the interactions between adult learning and the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the interlinkages between the different SDGs. We were trying to show that reaching the SDGs cannot do without the power of adult learning and education. And we really wanted to demonstrate the adult value of learning and education. And now I would just like to go through the different SDGs, and I would just show you the different themes that we looked at in our key messages without reading all of them out to you, but these key messages, if you're interested, of course, I can share them with you. I think the ASPEC colleagues, some of them also have them, but I would just like to show you which areas we actually put our emphasis on when looking at the different SDGs. So on the next slide, we will start with the general role of adult learning and education for the Agenda 2030, because we called adult learning and education a cross-cutting enabler for reaching the different SDGs, because we thought, well, the methodological approach of adult learning and education is actually so comprehensive. It's actually so far-reaching. It can be used in many different areas. With the first key message, we tried to put a focus on that, and then became a bit more specific without moving into one particular SDG yet, by saying, well, we find so many people that are being left behind. We are finding so many people that are marginalized, who are being addressed also in different SDGs. But we really find, and I mean, this is one key of the objective of ALE, particularly also in our Asian area, to prevent and reduce the number of marginalized people, thereby also contributing to reducing poverty, and to really address the target groups that particularly should be addressed. And again, we also emphasize the role of civil society in this process. I mean, ALE is a powerful approach of civil society organizations, and most of you will even be able to elaborate on this much more comprehensively that I might be able to do. But still, we can conclude for ALE being a really powerful tool to include civil society, not only governments, in reaching the overall Agenda 2030. Now let us move into the different SDGs. The first SDG, as you can see from the next slide, is of course SDG 4, and it was nice that SDG 4 was also under review at the HLPF last year, so that we could really focus on the role of ALE within this particular SDG as well. There is the emphasis of lifelong learning opportunities. And I mean, many of you know, for example, the lifelong learning chain, which very visibly illustrates the importance of lifelong learning and the long duration where people in their lives can actually receive adult learning and education and can take part of it. It's basically from going out of school until death, you know, until people are dying, which is a period of 50, 60, 70 years. So just looking at it this way, it already shows the importance of ALE. It ensures the education of future generations as well. That was the issue of one key message we put in particular, because it's about accessing parents who can then convey the importance of education to their children, and therefore ensure that they are educated, maybe educated in a much better and more comprehensive way than their parents. There should be, and I mean, this is one sub-target of SDG 4 as well, there should be a strong focus on sustainable development. And this is something adult learning and education can very well and in a very good and illustrative way ensure as well. There are some sub-goals, or they called the measures to reach the different sub-goals for A to 4C, and there's one focus on the professionalization of teachers in general. And of course, in our message, we emphasize particularly on the professionalization of ALE teachers. This is something where we see a strong demand in a lot of countries, also in the country where I'm working in Lao PDR, to really get more quality in the teaching capacities of adult learning and education. And as I mentioned before, there is the issue of marginalization, and we really need to make sure that there is an equal access to education for all. And in this regard, adult learning and education, with its inclusive potential, can play a very important role too. Now, moving on to the wider field of the education agenda 2030, we find on the next slide that there is, of course, a strong connection to SDG 8, which is about promoting productive employment and decent employment. And one very important advantage of adult learning and education is that there is a strong focus on the informal sector. We try to reach those who have been left out of the formal system, who've dropped out the formal system at a very early stage, and who are therefore most likely not to be in formal employment, but to just work in the informal sector, where it is very hard to find additional opportunities for education. But this is where, of course, the role of adult learning and education should step in, where we should really reach those who are informally employed. So this is one strength which we are emphasizing through one of our key messages as well. Another focus should be on decent work. I mean, especially in the informal sector, but in a lot of countries as well, in the formal sectors, we do not really find decent working conditions. And it is also our task as adult educators and the task of our area as well to actually point to the importance of decent work and to also help those who are being employed in a non-decent way to know their rights and to give them further strength to also advocate for their rights and for better working conditions. And of course, in this regard, and I mean, these are just some examples for the key messages we put under SDG 8, is that we can really address the need, what we call the need people not in employment, education, or training. So really those people who are in dire need for education, because education will empower them to find employment, to generate income, or to pursue further studies themselves. This is our strength, and this is where we can help to also achieve SDG 8. The next SDG that was under review and that we addressed is on the next slide, SDG 10. It's about inequalities. And I mean, this generally, of course, is something we really look at. And it's not always easy, because if I look, for example, at the German example, where we have quite a decent adult learning and education system, but where we have to make sure that through our adult education centers, we don't only reach those who have already received a lot of education, but also those who are rather far away from the education sector. Because if we don't do this, we increase inequalities even further. While, of course, our objective is exactly the opposite, especially also in developing countries and in emerging economies as well. So it's about human development, it's about social cohesion, it's also about awareness raising on discrimination. I mean, this is also looking at particularly groups that are left behind because they are from ethnic minorities, because they come from LGBT communities, or because they are being discriminated against for some other reason. So this is a strong target group on the one hand, and on the other hand, of course, also the majority communities, to make sure that there are less prejudices against these communities, and that these communities are actually being brought together, which I think ALE can really look at, because it really has a lot of good approaches in this regard. And of course, as well as regards the reduction of gender gaps, this is really a part, and I think ESPA has a lot of good approaches in this regard as well, shown in the past, of how powerful ALE can be in reducing gender gaps. So these were some of the key messages we had under SDG 10. And the next SDG was SDG 13, a very up-to-date topic, of course, ALE supporting climate action. ALE has long recognized the importance and the relevance of fighting climate change and to really taking action. So there is a lot of expertise, especially also on civil society side, in educating people. But we also wanted to show through this section of key messages that it would really be important that governments also recognize the importance of ALE and of civil society more directly, because we are really the ones who can help in reaching SDG 13. Of course, it's about particular issues as well. ALE can help to reduce the risk of disasters by educating communities by using the expertise of civil society organizations. We can help introducing complementary technology, and we should also not only talk, which is highly important, about literacy in terms of being able to read and write, being able to count, but also there should be something like climate literacy, because it really has an impact on people's everyday lives, and this is what we should emphasize on as well. And finally, there is the very comprehensive SDG 16, which still comprises a lot of areas that have not been touched by other SDGs, as you can see on the top in the full wording. But in a very particular way, ALE can help to prevent conflicts and to really strengthen communities, because it has many methods, many good approaches of how to empower communities, how to reduce violence, how to also increase the accountability of local authorities, of governments. It has tools of how to bring together civil society and decision makers, and it gives people the power to access information, because we also need to make sure through ALE that the disparity in terms of information between those in power and those who are not in power, yet who are very much being impacted by a lot of political decisions, by laws, by decrees, that this disparity is actually reduced. So ALE has a lot of tools in actually allowing people to access information. So this is just in a nutshell how we try to express in our outcome document, and with the great support of a lot of partner organizations, of course, including ASPE, ICAE, and others, in showing the impact of our discussions and showing, most importantly, the impact that we think ALE can have to really show to decision makers and to fellow partners, yes, this is the power, the potential of adult learning and education, and this is why it needs to be supported even more substantially in the future. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. Thanks very much for providing a very clear and comprehensive perspective on the role of ALE to reach all SDGs. This is also to request all participants to pen your questions in the Q&A box, which will be addressed in the open forum after our second speaker. Now, last year, ASPE initiated a review of the VNRs to assess the progress of governments in implementing ALE in SDG 4 or Education 2030, as well as its effort in embedding ALE in the SDGs. Anita Dighe, our next speaker in this panel, reviewed the voluntary national reviews of 12 countries in Asia Pacific from an ALE lens to analyze how governments are employing ALE for poverty reduction, health promotion, climate change actions, and other SDGs. The regional review report, along with the 4 country reports, is ready now for wider dissemination. I request Nani, the ASPE president, to launch these reports, which will be available and can be accessed from the ASPE website shortly. Nani, over to you for launching of the reports.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Anita. So this is exciting. So let me start with a short context on this report. Yeah, as already mentioned that ASBE, analyze the voluntary national review of countries, which include the Asia Pacific, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Central Asia, East Asia. So the VNR review from an L lens to look at how government are employing L for poverty alleviation, climate change action, health promotion, as Anita already mentioned before. So as we already know that ASBAI has been advocating strongly for adult learning and education, L within SDGs 4, and integrated in all the SDGs. First, we know that L is poorly financed. We can say that public financing for education in general is not enough. According to the GEMR, in 1 in 4 countries do not meet the benchmark of 4 to 6% of GDPs on education, or 15 to 20% of public expenditure to education. Well phrased even worse, UIL's 2006 GRE reported that based on available data, governments allowed less than 1% of their education budget on AL. L's character of being non-formal, informal, and complementary to formal education, as already, I think, outlined by Johan as well, has been considered as subordinate to formal schooling. At the same time, years of neglect and low funding for the sector has further relegated the subordinate identity to a perception of substandard poor quality education and low infrastructure. A fundamental premise is that the SDGs 4 agenda has a lot going for our advocacy. ALE being part of the global agenda has been a big win for our sectors. The strength our sector has won us a space in the SDGs as a platform in finding different ways to advocate governments on the imperative to invest in L. In the 2019 HLPF process, where SDGs is under review, the submission of the Education SDGs, Education 2030 Steering Committee, carried advocacy favoring ALE. They call for going beyond average, for ministries of education to sharpen their tools to reach the more marginalized and pay more attention to those discriminated. They also call for going beyond education, where government can no longer seek solution to challenges in the isolation, where integrated sectoral planning across level and spaces of education and across different sectors is necessary. And they call for going beyond schooling, going beyond the conflict of formal basic education, and consider education and learning throughout the life cycle, lifelong, and across multiple learning spaces, so life-wide. At this moment, on behalf of ASBAI Executive Council, Secretary General, and all the staffs, I'm grateful to launch the ASBAI's regional report on analysis of the VNR from an adult learning and education, or ALE lens, together with 4 country reports on VNR review from an ALE lens, which is India, Nepal, Vietnam, and the Philippines. May this report useful for our reference on our advocacy work on adult education and lifelong learning, and also on the SDGs in general. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you, Nani. Thank you so much. And I invite all participants here that you can access these reports and from the ASBI website, definitely from today afternoon. These are available for wider dissemination. A synthesis report is also being prepared, the shorter version of the full report, which will also be made available shortly. So now we move to our second speaker, and I'm happy to invite Anita Dighe, who's an independent consultant having worked in the field of literacy, education, information and communication technologies, and in open and distance learning for adults and for over many decades. She has served as the director of the Campus of Open Learning at the University of Delhi in India. So over to you, Anita Didi.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Anita Borkar, and thank you, Nani, for your introductory remarks. I am extremely grateful to ASPE for having given me an opportunity to do this synthesis report, because it was, I must say, it was a tremendous learning experience for me. And it was very exciting to go through each one of these reports and to see what is the work that each one of the countries has been doing. And it is very evident that the countries all over the world have really taken SDGs very seriously. I mean, that is one thing that comes across very clearly. And they have really taken the trouble to integrate SDGs in their national development plans. I'd like to start with my PowerPoint. The first slide, please. Okay, so the countries that were selected, that for which I did the analysis, were Pakistan 2019, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Laos, PDR, Vanuatu, Timor-Leste, Sri Lanka, Mongolia. And in addition, there were 4 VNRs, Philippines, Vietnam, India, and Nepal, which were reviewed by ASPE partners. But the synthesis report is based on the analysis of all the 12 country VNRs. Next. Now, what was the methodology that was used? As we've been told earlier, it is only SDG 4 that deals specifically with education. So we decided that we have to look at SDG 4 more critically and to see whether there is any reference to ALE. And then after that, we also decided to look at the other SDGs and to see whether there was any reference to ALE in the other SDGs. And as the previous speakers have indicated, that there is a tremendous amount of scope for including SDGs, ALE in the other SDGs. Then we looked at whether ALE was referred to in the policy issues, whether there was any mention of an organization structure for ALE, and what about financing, and any mention of financing, and if so, what amount? Next. Now, what is it that we found? What we found was that there was an integration of SDGs in the national development policies and plans. Now, in the case of Mongolia, Pakistan, and Indonesia, their parliaments first ratified the SDGs. In most countries, governments either passed a new law or they ensured that SDGs were incorporated in national policies and plans. And in the case of some countries, they even adopted SDGs as their own national development agenda. So aligning, mainstreaming, and localizing the SDGs into the national development and policies was essential for moving forward in the implementation of SDGs. Next. Now, we looked critically at SDG 4. Now, because of the progress that a number of countries had made during the for MDGs, because there has been some continuity that has been maintained as far as school education is concerned. So these, so Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, and Timor-Leste, they refer to this tremendous progress that they have made in enrollment, retention, and achievement levels at primary, secondary, some in even at tertiary levels, and basically improving gender parity. I found that Vanuatu and Pakistan have, in their case, that country VNRs, have not provided school statistics. But overall, the problems persist in most countries in formal education. And these relate to poor enrollment at preschool education level, or school dropouts, or poor quality of education, or poor quality of tertiary education, being largely irrelevant to the job market. But their problems persist with regard to the marginalized groups insofar as formal education is concerned. But the countries also, however, recognize that large sections of population, that is children, youth, and adults, need suitable formal, non-formal, and vocational education. Next. Okay. Now, while ALE is not mentioned in SDG 4, but each one of them is referring to either literacy or non-formal education or awareness programs or vocational and skills training programs, lifelong learning. Some are talking about capacity building programs, some are talking about attitudinal and behavioral change program. So they all form, they are all part of the lifelong learning framework. Now the problem of illiteracy persists among the youth and adults in Laos, PDR, Timor-Leste, Vanuatu, and Indonesia and Pakistan. However, one realized that they are all perceiving literacy as a standalone skill with no relationship with SDGs. They are also commenting on the vocational education not meeting the needs of the job market, and this is particularly so in the case of Laos, PDR, Vanuatu, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. But by and large, there is an awareness amongst most countries that they have to provide non-formal vocational lifelong learning for vulnerable programs for vulnerable groups. Now, while ALE is a great gender equality strategies, most countries do not have a separate program for women's empowerment, nor have they made efforts to integrate gender concerns in development programs. And that is a big lacune in the country DNRs, is that they're still not paying sufficient attention to gender issues as far as ALE programs are concerned. Next. So what is it that one is? What is it that that one can deduce from this? That some countries have ensured that educational programs are integrated in SDG implementation. In others, I found that they are indicating spaces where it would be possible to integrate the educational programs in SDGs. But there are some programs that are not, they make no reference of the need to integrate education programs in SDGs. Yeah, next. I made a summary table so that you could get a sense of the different SDGs and the countries that have either already integrated ALE in the implementation of SDGs, or where you sort of felt that there is a possibility that they could integrate ALE in the implementation of SDGs. So no poverty, and the countries are listed in zero hunger, SDG 3, good health and well-being, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable clean and clean energy. Yeah, next. Decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequalities, responsible consumption. So in each of these, there are spaces that are available, and some countries, particularly Kazakhstan and Timor-Leste, are quite aware of the need to develop educational programs in order to strengthen SDGs. And as I said, there are other countries that are indicating the possibilities for incorporating ALE in SDG implementation. Next. So what does the analysis show us? Again, no country mentions ALE in the other SDGs, but they are all either implemented or could possibly design and implement variety of ALE programs. But what is coming across very clearly is the importance of political commitment and policies which determine the nature of ALE interventions. As I said earlier, in the case of Kazakhstan and Timor-Leste, it is quite evident. Development of human resources is of prime importance in Indonesia and Pakistan. ALE is considered one of the determinants of poverty in Lao PDR. In the case of Sri Lanka, because of climate-induced disasters, Sri Lanka highlights the need for awareness raising programs, capacity building programs, and programs to bring about behavioral change. It is only in the case of Mongolia and Vanuatu that any reference to skills training or awareness programs is incidental and sporadic. So the next issue that we dealt with was that of policy and ALE.
Следующий вопрос, который мы рассматривали, это касается политики политики в области в сфере образования для взрослых.
Sorry, Subra.
Can I continue?
We're listening to the Russian interpretation.
Anita, can I continue?
Сейчас мы попытаемся наладить все-таки эту проблему с переводом, потому что меня каждый раз программа отключала. Yes, Subra, I can hear you.
We can hear you on English channel. Maybe you'll have to change your channel.
Yeah, I don't see this option of channels actually.
Just a second.
Can I continue, Anita?
Yes, please. I think you can.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Thank you.
So the importance of clearly stated policy to develop human resources. This is very essential for strengthening SDGs. And countries that have such a policy, they are more likely to understand importance of developing human capital and are more likely to look for spaces in the process of implementing SDGs where suitable educational interventions can be made. They're also more likely to understand that this whole concept of one-size-fits-all programs, that does not succeed really. But since SDGs insist on no one is left behind principle to ensure that all vulnerable groups are identified, they have to recognize that ALE would be the most appropriate in designing education programs because ALE offers a whole variety, a whole gamut of programs such as formal, non-formal, and informal programs that can meet the educational needs of each clientele group. Now, particularly in the multi-ethnic and multilingual societies, and this region has a few countries that are multi-ethnic and multilingual, ALE would have a pivotal role to play in strengthening SDGs. Next. Organizational structures. You see the SDGs, the review has shown that SDGs has, the adoption of the SDGs has taken place at the highest level. So in some cases, the presidential decree was issued and a high-level committee was constituted. Either the president or the prime minister or the deputy chair, they chaired these committees. Then a national level secretariat was set up and a national level organization which involved the government, private sector, civil society, academics, professionals. So it was a very representative group that was set up at the national level. Now, while the VNRs clearly mention organizational structures at the national level and in some cases even at the regional and provincial levels, but the structures at the lower levels are not mentioned. And the country VNRs, of course, are not throwing any light on ALE delivery mechanisms, which in the case of Timor-Leste and Kazakhstan is a little strange because for them, human resource development is a priority concern for their governments. Yeah, next. The next question was that about finance, and of course they all recognize that there are inadequacies of finances that are required to achieve SDGs. Each one of them is saying this, but they feel the need for partnerships, and they feel, and they've all mentioned this, that besides the national and local governments, you have civil society groups, private sector, development agencies, international community, remittances from abroad, crowdfunding. So there are various possibilities, but they still expect the international agencies to play a very important role in providing. Now, basically, this is financing SDGs. Now, one would have to now think separately. If one is thinking about ALE and financing of ALE, who would be financing ALE will have to be thought about. Next. I'll take the next one first, and then I'll come to this. I'll just take the next, the conclusions. Okay. Now, if you look at the various UN and the UNESCO and UN documents, education is at the heart of the SDGs. Now, even the DESA working paper number 26, which examined the link between education and SDGs, came to the conclusion that embedding ALE in SDGs is imperative. Now, presently, SDGs have a standalone approach to ALE. They are regarded as good, but not necessarily essential for achieving SDGs. Unlike health, now this is surprising because health is considered a cross-cutting issue, but ALE is not regarded as essential to dealing with problems of poverty, hunger, or reducing inequalities. So what this review has shown is the need to regard ALE as a cross-cutting issue for strengthening the overall success of SDGs. Now, presently, SDGs focus on no one is left behind principle. Now, what has happened is that each one of the country VNRs are identifying the vulnerable groups that no one is left behind in terms of access to various services. But what is not emphasized is provision of education services to such groups is also essential. And since ALE has a variety of components that include formal, non-formal, and formal learning needs of each of these groups could be met through provisioning of ALE. And ICTs definitely would have a very important role to play in strengthening the ALE programs. Next. Lifelong learning is an umbrella term and ensures that learning is continuous throughout life. What is envisaged in the implementation of SDGs is that the governments and societies would be involved. So they talks about the whole of society, the whole of government and whole of society approach to the implementation. Now, while the SDGs focus on three essential dimensions of sustainable development, that is economic, social, and environmental dimensions, what this review is proposing is the fourth dimension, which is that of human resource development. As a matter of fact, human resource development is an essential and a necessary dimension for the achievement of people-centered sustainable development goals. This I have already mentioned. I don't need to repeat this. The no one is left behind principle. Next. So what this review is suggesting is that we also make it a whole of people. So it's not just whole of government or whole of society, but now whole of people's movement, so that education needs of all sections of the society are met in the lifelong learning framework. But for this to happen, suitable policies will have to be formulated, and various policy and planning decisions will have to be taken. I'll now come to the last slide, which is key recommendations. So if you can just go back. What are the key recommendations? So ALE should be seen as essential for the achievement of SDGs, and not just good to have. ALE is critical to address the SDG ambition to leave no one behind, that is it is a powerful tool to address issues of inequality and discrimination. Lifelong learning and ALE require a whole of government, whole of society, and a whole of people's movement approach. And there is a need for strong policies, defined delivery mechanisms in the public sector, right down to the local level, including interagency cooperation, adequate financing, quality ALE through the professionalization and better compensation of ALE trainers, more effective teaching learning materials, effective monitoring and evaluation mechanisms in order to enhance quality. So all of this would be required in order to strengthen ALE in the achievement of SDG goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita ji, for the extensive description of the study and its findings and recommendations. Thank you so much. And now we invite question and answers. I don't see any question and answers right now in our box, but if there are any question and answers, please put them in the question and answer box. Okay. I think also as you reflect on both the presentations, and you also would have questions, or you would have comments to based on both the presentations. But I think the next part of this panel is coming to field level experiences, country level experiences of our national education coalitions and members of ASPE who've been active in ALE advocacy at their local level. So this is also an invite for all of you to still pen down your questions, and which we can address after the next session. But there is a question. Yeah. Is this question by Rene? Yeah, it's on the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it says that while we see the critical role of ALE in achieving the SDGs, governments still give low priority to ALE.
Yeah.
What actions can make a difference to prompt governments to take note and prioritize ALE in the government's agenda?
Yeah. You want me to answer?
Yes, please. Yeah, this.
You want me to answer?
Yes, please, Anita ji.
Oh, okay. You know, that's a very good question, because this has been our problem all along, all through the years. And as Ms. Nani's presentation indicated, that governments typically provide less than 1% of the education budget for adult education programs. And that is because there are a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and it would be difficult to cover all of them. But I think we have to continue to lobby, because while we, those of us in the field of adult education, recognize the importance and recognize how important it is to educate people, governments don't. And therefore, this kind of effort. And I think this initiative that ASBE has taken really is part of that effort, is to now lobby, and lobby very strongly, because unless we lobby, we are not going to win this struggle. And I think that learning, the community learning center approach, where you can actually demonstrate, because now demonstration is also very important on a large scale, because otherwise the civil society groups work on a very limited kind of a scale. So something that can be done on a fairly large scale, which can demonstrate how effective this can be. So I think we'll have to think of various strategies. I don't think we can think of just one strategy, and they will certainly vary from country to country, but we will have to be at it.
Okay. Thank you, Anita ji. And related to this question, there was another in the question box, but which was removed. And the question was, what are the strategies to implement ALE? So it's almost similar to what you responded to, and hence I would request Johan if he has to share his reflections on this question. So what are the strategies to implement ALE?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very general and very comprehensive question, which would, of course, start basically where Anita ended, because in order to be able to implement ALE strategies, you need to make sure they are in place first. And then, of course, it's about budget, it's about capacities on various levels, and it's about the right approaches for the right target group. So, I mean, just to be short, I would say it's about finding the right approaches for the right target groups, which is very country specific and which is also very specific to the particular target group you're dealing with. It's about ensuring inclusion as much as possible. And by that, I would particularly think of civil society, that the civil society can play a role, can also play a role as provider of adult education, but also plays a role in assuring quality of government services in terms of ALE. And this is something we really have to continue looking at very closely. Also, when I look at the results of the VNR, that countries do not just say, yes, we have something in place, but it has to be sure that they have something in place which is of good quality. And this, of course, requires a lot of action from our side, capacity building for organizations, for adult educators, curricula, ensuring that we have a strong connection to what is really needed in terms of skills and know-how, and to have a strong relevance to the everyday lives of our communities.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Johan. And I think we should move to the second part of this panel. And I invite my colleague Subrat to moderate the next section of this panel. And before that, I want to really sincerely say thanks to both our speakers, to Nani, our president, for opening this webinar, and also to all the participants for being present and offering their questions and comments. So we look forward to more interaction and a very fruitful deliberation in this webinar. So thank you so much, and over to you, Subrat.
Thank you so much, Anita. I think this is fantastic, and hello everyone. And I think we had a very good start to the webinar, especially the panel one, and the presentations were really enriching and engaging as well, I believe, because it has, though we are not speaking, but it is engaging us at least in our thoughts. And we are also very fortunate to have 4 of our members as well as colleagues from 4 countries who are expert practitioners and advocates of ALE in their respective countries and also at international forum. It's a good time to hear from them. Let me welcome Nupur from National Coalition of Education India. Then I also welcome Mr. Ram Gaire, National Campaign for Education. I welcome Ms. Kim An from WIFA, Vietnam, and who is also our EC member. And also let me welcome May Cinco, who is the National Coordinator at Civil Society Network for Education Reforms in Philippines. And it is also known as ENET Philippines. I will invite them one by one, and each will have, I will request them to put their presentation in 7 minutes. Meanwhile, I'll request all the attendees, please put your questions on the Q&A box, so that after all 4 presentations, we can look at that and we can answer those questions. And also you can write your thoughts on the chat box. Please don't forget that. So without wasting much time, let me welcome our first panelist, Ms. Nupur from India. Over to you, Nupur.
Uh, hi everyone. Very good morning. Thank you, Subrat, for allowing me to. Uh, is it possible for you to put up my presentation? Because so, do you have my presentation with you?
Yes, no problem. Sure.
Can't hear you, Subrat. Thank you. Thank you, Subrat. So, hi everyone, once again, and a very good morning and good afternoon. So today I'll be presenting about all the actions and initiatives that we have undertaken. I would also like to mention that NC India to take up the early advocacy for decades on adult education and learning, and this advocacy, this collaboration has really helped both organizations to understanding and their voice. So with that, let me start with the introduction. Let me set a little context about how things are in India with regards to adult education and learning. So India is actually in the highest number of illiterates in the world. And this data I quote from UNESCO data, UNESCO GEM report that we have. And overall literacy, look at overall literacy of India, it's 74%, for females as low as 5%. And if we look at the literacy rate of marginalized section, and especially women, we can see that Muslim women, the literacy rate is as low as 47%. For scheduled caste women, it's 43%, and for scheduled tribes, it's worst, which stands at 37% of the population being literate. Now, if we look at the budgetary allocations that we have with regards to ALE, adult learning, it's very low and abysmal. And it was in 2017-18, it was as low as 20 million, which was again substantially reduced to half, around 5.2 million, one fourth actually, 5.2 million, which was available for 2018 and 19. And that too was not really released. The funds are not released to the states. So there's a major problem of allocation of funds and utilization of those funds. Now, one more I would like to share that runs for adult learning and education, which is called Reading and Writing Campaign. And currently, this is the only program that runs, and the allocation made under this program is just $6 per person per learner, and which is inclusive of all the system that needs to be set up and all the trainings that needs to be undertaken. So that, let me move to the next slide. The initiatives taken by Niranta Transparency with regards to the advocacy. Next slide. So the first initiative that I would like to share is the parliamentarians meet that we had in December 2019 with regards to the spotlight report that National coalitions had prepared. The spotlight report had recommendations with regards to AME as well, and this was sent to there were three major demands with regards to that we had presented. One was to develop a robust policy with vision, which addresses the vast of marginalized communities, and also to integrate literacy in the ongoing programs like National Rural Livelihood Missions. So this was one of the recommendations made. The second recommendation that we was regarding the review of Sakshar Bharat program to review and measure its impact as well as the gaps to assess the reach and effectiveness of this program. We also demanded to put up this information in the public domain so that it's more accessible and so that it can be used for further developing adult education programs. And the third, next slide please. And the third recommendation made was with regards to the Parna Likhna Abhiyan, which I just mentioned is the only running program on adult education and learning. Regards to this, we had recommended that the government must clearly articulate the program design, the target, the priorities, and the finances for this program. And it must be sufficiently funded based on rational calculation of number of adults. So as I mentioned, they've just allocated $6 per learner. So we had demanded to rationally calculate this and sufficient with the funds for running this program. Before the MP meet, we also had several MPs. We met 55 member of parliamentarians individually and spoke to them about the issues at hand and what are our demands with respect to ALE to be addressed in the parliament. Next slide, please. Another activity, another initiative that NC India and Nirantar took was the VNR review from ALE Lens. Most of it has been presented by Anita ji already, so let me not go much into detail, but a few things that I would like to mention, especially with context of India, is that ALE was not mentioned even once in the VNR report that was submitted by India, and the word literacy was mentioned just once. So major focus was around youth skills and primary education in the VNR that India submitted in 2017. The VNR also eulogized a lot about the national rural livelihood missions and how it empowers women, but various steps shown that how this has led to increased burden of loans on women. So this has been a problem which has not been addressed by the government and needs attention now. Digital divide is also that was missed in the VNR report, was not really talked about, and government of India really talked about free cooking gas that was provided and how it has empowered women. But from the way we look at it, we think that it's a patriarchal mindset of the policymakers who see providing free cooking gas as an empowerment for women. So these are few of the important points that we could see from the VNR review that we did of the VNR that was submitted by Indian government. Next slide, please. The third initiative was with regards to consultation on the draft national education policy. After more than 30 years, is coming up with a new national policy, and NC India and Nirantar did organize a lot of consultations to understand what are the policy regarding ALE and what are the missing what are the gaps that needs to be addressed. So we got a lot of recommendations which we submitted to the Ministry of Education. We also organized, now after the draft was finalized, we again organized a webinar on the final draft of National Education Policy to look at what has been addressed and how will this policy impact in context of ALE. We also organized a webinar on significance of digital literacy and during the digital literacy and ALE during COVID-19. So these are a few of the webinars and consultations we organized with regards to ALE. Nirantar also has contributed a lot of articles and write-ups for ASPE and DVV newsletters, which I wanted to mention here. Next slide, please. With regards to what recommendations we have been talking about to be incorporated in SDG 4 national framework, there are two very important recommendations that we have been making. And so India has the indicators framework and has dealt all the SDGs and all the indicators that the global framework has. But if we look at SDG 4, it completely misses on adult education, and they are not then actually there are no indicators which talks about adult education. So for recommendation one, we had recommended, and we still recommend that the national indicator must include an indicator which is specific to women. So while the national framework have indicators which talks about proportion of 10 adults with information and communication technology skills, and it talks about literacy rate of youth in age group of 4, which is very limited. These are the only two indicators in national framework of indicators, SDG indicators in India, which slightly talks about adult literacy. It does not talk about women literacy, which really needs attention at this time. One that the second recommendations that NC India and Niranta has been making is about an indicator targeting adults with digital literacy and skills. And also the desegregated data must be collected. Why the digital literacy, I mean, there's all of us will agree that it has become a very important skill that everyone must have. So that is distinct from the SDG national framework indicators framework that we have in India. So one that we have suggested that, and if you look at the data and if you look at the percentage of non-literate women and how many women, just 29% of the literate women are being able to access digital space. And that's why it becomes very important to have a desegregated data of how many women are able to access that digital space, and not just how many women, but women coming from which community, women coming from Dalit communities, women coming from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe communities, and Muslim communities. So this desegregated data is very much to really have a more nuanced understanding and more nuanced planning and with regards to adult learning and education. So these are the two recommendations that we make with regards for national framework. And moving towards my last presentation, I know I'm slightly 1 minute above my time. Our future engagements, we are planning to develop a vision document on ALE. And the whole idea to develop this vision document is because we understand that India do not even have, the ministry has not even developed any such document to really understand how do we look at ALE and on what do we base our programs. So all the programs that are introduced are very random and very old fashioned, that has been running for decades now. So we thought it would be a good idea to come up with a vision document which could explain how do we look at ALE and in this current context. And with this document, we also plan to engage with non-government organizations, because it's the idea is to create a narrative around ALE. Not even NGOs, not even civil society organizations, philanthropic organizations are talking much about ALE. And those organizations which are putting in money and financial sources to ALE are again running on the very old fashioned way of looking at ALE. So the vision document would help us to create a narrative and reach out to these organizations to really relook at how they look at adult education. And it could also be used for advocacy with government missionaries, Department of State, District, Punjab. So these are the future engagements that NC India and Niranta plan for ALE advocacy. So thank you everyone, and all the questions are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Nupur. This was very informative, and now, of course, there will be a lot of questions, I know, but then one important thing that I pick from here is the illiteracy rate in India, and also the thinking of the patriarchy angle in distributing cooking gas. So thank you so much. We will continue discussing more on this. Next, let me welcome Mr. Ram Gaire from NCE Nepal. Ram, over to you.
Thank you, Suprad. Thank you very much, ASWE, for organizing this event. And I saw this opportunity to share the initiatives that NC Nepal has taken during the year. And it's a great opportunity to learn from the other coalitions, experts, and organizations also. Can you please share my slides? Yeah, next. Yeah, so in context of Nepal, I think this is a more or less similar context in South Asia, and some of the issues that may relate to the in the context of India also that Nupur already shared. We have the constitutions that ensure the access of every individual, especially the marginalized community, to having decent employment opportunities. And this is more from the basic and other mode of education. This is mostly it refer to the alternative learning and other literacy related programs. And we have also the schools.
Связь вернулась ко мне. Я сейчас пытаюсь, не знаю, вы меня слышите или нет.
Can I?
Yeah, you can. Khurshid, you have to change the line of your channel. Sorry to say, sorry for the interruption.
Yes, Subrat, I apologize. I don't see this the switch buttons.
Yeah, because of the
Russian and
phones.
English.
Because of the phone, I guess, no, Khurshid. So maybe I'll set you up, and maybe Ram, you can continue.
Yeah, I used this phone before, so it was okay. But today is something wrong.
Yeah, you dropped
good,
the setting change, so no problem. Ram, you can continue.
Yeah, thank you, Subrat. Sure. And we have a school sector development plan that aims to enable the adults, especially to engage in the lifelong learning opportunities and to help them to enhance their capabilities to extend the livelihood system. And it focused more on the operational and vocational skills. And we have SDG framework that is more for the SDG 4 implementation in the country level. And this also is a more or similar that other policies talks about, that is more on the learning needs of the women, young people and adults. This is more through the equitable access on the alternative learning and life skills program. And last year, the government launched the National Education Policy that focuses on the program of lifelong learning, and it is more focused to maintain the equivalence of the qualifications of the formal, non-formal, and the vocational and technical educations. This is through the developing the national framework that is the yet to be developed. And we have also the Local Government Operation Act. It is especially after the country move into the federal system, and that local governments, they are supposed to formulate the policies and also the standards to support the alternative learning and literacy program. And it is more for the non-formal educations, open learning, alternative and community learning programs. Next. And in context of this, last year with the partnership of ASBE, we had the analysis of the Vienna, that was the country reported in 2017, and other together with this, we also analyzed the educational policies. And we did the recommendations to the National Planning Commissions, which is the main, apex body to be responsible in the Vienna process. And as mentioned in the presentation of Anitaji, that we focused on the, especially on the whether the DNR report, it was able to integrate the provision of ALE or not. And we focused on the skills training and awareness building related program, whether there is any provisions or not, and how the DNR speaks about this. And also, are there any policies in the country level that talks and that supports the provisions? And also we looked whether the ALE related program and systems, they are well financed or not, and then are there any government mechanism or institutional mechanism to support the ALE program and ALE systems at the country level. So, and our analysis, it was shared in the earlier presentation also, and we just want to quickly share that the finding was there is no any ALE specific policies in the country level, but though different policies, they talk about the adult learning and literacy and empowerments of the youth, women, and other marginalized communities, but there is no any specific policies to address the ALE. And the early and adult learning and education is mostly confined with the literacy program, which is more focused for the numeracy and literacy, not much beyond from this. And AL is not mentioned adequately in the VNR that we reviewed last year. And also there is not well adequate finance to support the ELE related program and ELE related policies in the country level. And the most critical issue is that there should be that institutional arrangement and structures to be a responsible to respond to the ELE related programs. But the critical is in all level of the government. There is no the specific body to respond in this ALE system. Next. And so based on the review of the VNR 2017, we came up with the recommendations that ALE need to be integrated in the policies, and it need to be addressed in the plans and programs of all level of the government from local to federal level. And adult learning and education need to be prioritized, and it need to be adequately addressed from the government budget so that the ALE related program, ALE related policies that is well translated into the actions, and the people get a benefit. And there need to be a institutional arrangement that specifically responsible for the ALE related policies. And also there need to be the training to the teachers that focus on education and adult, and that also they also can support out of school youth so that because they are not well addressed from the government program and policies. And also there need to be the involvement of the CSOs, because they outreach to the remote and other marginalized communities, and they are widespread throughout the country, so that they can contribute in the functional literacy related programs. And also there is the duplications of the work, especially on the conducting the training, awareness raising related program, and even women empowerment related program, and that need to be that kind of duplication need to be avoided. And maybe that need to be a strong and coordinations and a strong inter-ministerial agencies coordination mechanism for ALE system. Next. And based on the recommendations, and we had lots of engagement in the VNR process. And as this 2020 was the VNR country reported VNR in high-level political forum, and we had lots of engagement. And we, together with the, in the partnership with the ASBE, we produced the spotlight report in the country level also that focused to the SDG 4. And for this report, ALE was one of the priority agenda, and also based on the recommendation that came up with the VNR review on ALE perspectives, we had engagement in the national planning commissions. We had a submission based on the recommendations. And also we had a strong collaboration and coordinations with the civil society organization, especially SDG Forum, and that is the civil society forum that works for the SDG, different SDG goals. And they also produced the civil society report, and we had also engaged and we influenced there, so that ALE related agenda also reflected in the CSO's broader report on SDG. Next. And we also reviewed the government budget on the yearly perspectives, and from the analysis that 31% fund is for the non-formal, sectors in the federal government, but there is no any specification in the province and the local budget for the ALE and others ALE related agendas. And we had a meeting with and discussion with the national commissions for UNESCO for influencing national framework of SDG4, especially it was prepared during this period. And we had a lot of engagement and submission based on the recommendation of VNR analysis. Next. And we did lots of discourse and advocacy with all level of government, especially the local governments, because they are supposed to formulate the policies, and they are more responsible to launch the ALE related programs by the constitutions, because they are the ultimate local government at the grassroots level. And even during the COVID also, we had a focused interventions with the local government to make sensitize them on the agenda, and to prioritize this agenda in the response of the local government. And we produced the lots of flyers, infographics, and posters that is mainly on the agenda of the yearly, especially promoting alternative learning, adults, youth, and marginalized communities, and widely disseminate so that the governments, policymakers, and other stakeholders, including the community peoples, they are well aware and sensitized. And also the media mobilizations and partnerships, so that the different kind of articles and features news are on the online and print medias, so that this also contribute to raise the awareness of the community. Next. And based on the analysis on the Vienna 2020, and in comparison with the 2017 analysis that we did last year, that the Vienna 2020 reflect articulate to promote well-being and decent life of the women, adult, and senior citizen. It is specifically mentioned there. It was not in the 2017 report. And the gender equality in education is a mentions in this report. And it focused for the literacy campaign for reducing the illiteracy in the country, because the government has launched the Literate Nepal campaign for the coming 10 years. And also there is the provisions of the gender responsive budgeting from the local and the federal government. It articulate in this VNR process. And though in our analysis, we found in the federal government has this system, but some of the local government also have started gender responsive budgeting, but it is yet to reflect in all province and the local government. And it's also articulate to prepare the national framework for leaving no one behind, to address those communities, so that that framework address for the communities that are really left behind. And there is the though 2020 Vienna also do not reflect much on the early agenda, but there are some progressive agendas in comparison to 2017. So we need to have a lots of advocacy with the local government, but there are some kind of achievement that we did during the year-long campaign and advocacy. And in a plan that just our review of Vienna 2020 was from the early and gender perspective, and going on, and based on that we have the follow-up engagement in the country level, and also we'll have more engagement in the local government. As I mentioned, they are the responsible to implement, to formulate the Vienna related policies and program. And we want to build the capacity of the local government, and so that they will empower. And so early related agendas is well reflected in the local policies and the program. Thank you very much. And I will be happy if there is any questions and for any discussions.
Thank you so much, Ram. This was quite precise, and thank you for enriching us. Definitely we'll get back to the questions, and I will also take this opportunity to request all participants, please put your question on the Q&A box, and we will look at that after all 4 presentations. Okay, let me quickly now invite Ms. Kim An and Ms. Thuy from Wi-Fi Vietnam. Over to you, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Subrat. Do you hear me well?
Yes. Kim.
Yes. Okay.
Very well. Thank you.
Okay, so I will present for Wi-Fi Vietnam. Subrat, can you please help put my presentations?
on?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I will start first with a little bit of context. In Vietnam, the government have issued the National Plan of Actions on SDGs in 2016, and not long after the National Plan of Actions on SDGs approved, the Ministry of Education approved the National Plan of Actions on SDG 4. And we also have the Education Strategic Development Plan, which will be expired this year. And we are all working together for the development of the next phase of this plan, 2021-2030. And with regards to ELS specifically, we have the national project on building a learning society. So basically, it's a national program on lifelong learning. We can understand it that way. So having all that high-level national plan of actions and plan around, what we realize is what important is the plan of actions at local level, because then all of these national plan will need to be aligned in a provincial plan of actions, annual provincial plan of actions. And this plan of actions will include all the sectors, all the SDGs that we want to talk about: health, economic, either labor or education, and so on. So the yearly provincial plan of actions with assigned budget will be the implementations plan, that all the things will be implemented on the ground in reality. And so having all this quite good guiding plan at national around, we still see some limitations. First is there is lack of coordination and linkages between different agencies that are responsible for air and air monitoring. And same as India, we find data collections is a big gap, and we really lack of disaggregated data and qualitative data in order to be effective in development of the local need-based curriculum and in targeting the marginalized. And we find that there is a lack of interventions to influence the local plan, local implementations plan, the annual plan of the provincial level, at the provincial level, because the government assigned provincial government to develop annual plan, and when they combine all 64 provincial plans, then we will have the national plans. Next, please. How to ensure the integration of in SDGs? We have some options, and this is our context, our working situations. We find that we need to ensure the participations of local government and other local stakeholders in national air policy consultation. What we find is whenever there is national consultations, the government were able to invite very few local government to participate. Out of 64 provinces we have in Vietnam, usually they will be able to invite like 7 or 8 provinces. So we think that if CSO, international organizations, international NGOs or UN organizations can come in here to ensure that there will be more participations from local government. So national policy process will be fed by really reality from the local level, then it will improve the situations. Because what we see is now we are doing very good at influencing national level or at regional or global level. But we also should focus on bringing more local voices in this high-level policy process. Another recommendation is to influence the local annual planning process, as I mentioned earlier, because of the importance of this process. So how we can influence the local annual planning process? maybe through building capacity for organizations and groups that work at local level on ill, and on ill advocacy, and also on the local planning process and the local budgeting process, because these processes are quite complicated. And if we don't understand it well, or local players don't understand it well, then our interventions or our influence may not be effective. We also find that we need to create more spaces or new spaces if it's not already available at local level for local error supporters and implementers to advocate. For example, we can support to make local consultations available. That's one example. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. And on VIFA error advocacy plan, last year we were supported by ASPE to conduct 2 studies on financing options for Skill for Work for marginalized women, and another one on the assessment of the merge of the 3 ill center at district level. So in our plan, we want to disseminate the key findings and recommendations from this study to wider public and stakeholders. And last January 2020, in January 2020, we were able to organize a consultation workshop to disseminate the findings and also discuss the recommendations with very diverse stakeholder groups. And we also plan to send formal recommendations after we combine all the analysis that we have done, and we have received comments from stakeholders. So we will come up with a formal recommendation letter to send to the government. And some key recommendations from the studies, I will not mention all, but some of them including, for example, we need to build an understanding of current air budget and spending in order to advocate for appropriate budget, because the situation now is whenever advocates for to increase budget for air, for example, in Vietnam now, the budget for continuing education, that's the budget we see from education sector, is less than 2%. And while some people say the international recommendation is 6%, and response is always like, it's not that only 2%, but it also the budget under labor sectors and under ministry and also military, and also under Ministry of Defense, for example. How much it is, really, how much in total, nobody knows. So I think the government to have this kind of understanding. Also, one of the recommendations is to make disaggregated air data available in terms of gender, disability, ethnicity, etc. So we can target the marginalized group more effectively. So build appropriate learning program. One of the recommendations is also about changing the air policies and program also need to target at changing gender perceptions on what women can or supposed to do. Because now usually programs are very focused on, for example, specific technical training or vocational training or some specific skill, but changing and from what we find. Next slide, please. On our advocacy plan, we also want to, we will engage in key national policy process that we have mentioned earlier, the education sector development planning process, which is happening now this year and next year for 2021-2030. And also there will be a final assessment of our national program on building a learning society this year. So the national program on building a learning society is expired in 2020, and this year there will be an assessment of that program, and it will be also the basis for the development of the next phase of that program, and also the assessment of SDG 4 National Plan of Actions. So we need to make sure that we will be engaged in all these important processes that will be happening this year and next year in Vietnam. Also, we plan to play an active role in reaching key stakeholders, even among the government or between governments and CSO. We say among the government because, for example, vocational training or L targets is like not under just the task of Ministry of Education, but also labor sectors in also other ministry. And even, for example, within Ministry of Education, they have the department that is Department of Continuing Education, who is in charge of policy decision-making policies on L, for example. And then they have the Research Institute, who is in charge of collecting data, doing scientific research. But these two departments are not really linked. Like they don't really listen to each other. So we think that we need to play a role here to really gather the voice of L supporters together. Because if they don't join, so who will talk with the minister, who will advocate to the minister for L, and also who will advocate the national government for L, for example, from education sector. And we also find that building capacity for L supporting groups and implementers at local level. For example, for VAFA member working at the community level, for example, for CLC, for Women's Union at the local level, for the Vietnam Associations of Promotion of Education. They also have network at all the community. So building capacity for them in order to influence the L planning and implementations at local level is also part of our plan. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And back to you, Subrat.
Thank you so much, Kiman. That was quite brief and very fast as well. Thank you so much. We will continue with the questions after the presentation. As I keep on sharing, that's why I encourage you to write your questions. Okay, so next let me welcome our colleague, our member, May Cinco from INET Philippines. And I believe she is sharing her own screen. So thank you so much. Over to you, May.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Subrat. Good afternoon to colleagues in ASBAY and partners, of course, and long-time friend, Robbie. Hello. So I will present the initiative of INET Philippines with regards to ALE in the context of Sustainable Development Goals. So next slide, please. So I'll focus on a very data that would also involve our initiative and of course the initiative also of the government. So this is data, adult missing basic education in the Philippines. As of 2016 Annual Poverty Indicator Survey, it reports that there are 12.8 million Filipinos aged 31 to 59 years old have not completed their basic education. That is only the data about that age bracket. But with regards to the total number of Filipinos missing basic education, according to 2018 World Bank note, it is 24 million. But I specified on this age bracket, no, for our purpose of ALE. So next slide, please. So there is this initiative both on the government side and of course on the civil society organization of having this alternative learning system or ALS. Because there are also initiatives from the community that also implement their own ALS, and it is also one of the prime intervention of the Philippine government to address the education system for the disadvantaged and marginalized sectors. Okay, so it's called the alternative learning system. So what is this? It is the second chance education to Filipinos missing a basic education. So it is a parallel education system to the formal basic education system, or from kindergarten to grade 12, no? So it's parallel and at par. And then most of the enrollees here, or the enrollees specifically, are dropped out due to financial reasons, and also women, they drop out of school due to pregnancy and marriage and early marriage. So next slides, please. So what are so far the impact of ALS? So in implementing this kind of education system, it shows into the study of the World Bank that about 60% of ALS enrollees who have passed A&E. A&E is accreditation and equivalency tests when to enroll in tertiary education or vocational training. So when you pass these tests, so when you enroll in ALS and you pass the A&E test, it is equivalent to a secondary level graduation. So you receive a certificate from the Department of Education that you are eligible graduate of the secondary education. Then you can enroll into college, or you can pursue your vocational courses, or even you can go to a job, no, that required secondary level graduation. And those who pass also A&E tests were twice likely to report being employed as full wage earners. So that is the advantage of having this alternative learning system. So that's why we also push for the full implementation of alternative learning system. And next slides, please. So what are the initiatives of the INET Philippines with regards to intervention in the alternative learning system? So we see that engaging into the alternative learning system, we also push our agenda for adult learning and education and ALE in the context of sustainable development goals. So particularly, we participate in the task force alternative learning system that is designing the program on ALS. And also we advocate for the passage of the alternative learning system bill, the LCC bill. I saw colleagues here in LCCs joining our webinar. Sir Eric is here. And I think later USEC Undersecretary San Antonio will be discussing about the government initiative. So the the LCC bill, or the Literacy Coordinating Council bill, and inclusive education for learners with disabilities. Later, I will discuss more about the ALS bill, but I would like to focus now on the LCC bill because Literacy Coordinating Council is the mandated body of the government for all the efforts in the universalization of literacy in the Philippines. So it recommends policy and how to develop or how to improve our the government literacy initiative. So by the way, INET Philippines also sits in the LCC as the CSO representative. So those initiatives of our advocacy on adult learning and education, that is also a platform that we are being maximizing. So we also sit in the technical working group, or the TWG, in the House of Representatives and Senate. These are the legislative bodies in our government. If you can see, I don't know if everyone can see because there is some screen here. That is one of the hearing that our President Flora Arellano is attending in the Senate, pushing for the education in time of COVID. Making sure that education for the marginalized and disadvantaged sectors are included in the education plan amid COVID-19. And on the lower part, you can see our advocacy officer, Michi Chan, also attending the House the Senate Technical Working Group on the drafting of the provisions for the inclusive education for learners with disability. So we are part of it, and we are also resource person. We got invitation from both houses when there are technical working groups meetings, and also there are Senate hearings and also House of Representative hearings. So that is our advocacy. And then next slide, please. So we recommend. So yeah, here, as I told you before, so our bill on inclusive education for learners with disability, because not only the children are very disadvantaged, but there are many adults with disability that really do not have education. So we really have to push this kind of legislations. Now it is being drafted into a bill after the technical working group meetings. And that is one of the greatest provision that we are advocating, is to push that learners with disability has also right for education. It is not a special needs, but rather the right to be educated. So that is very essential in our advocacy. And the next one is the bill on institutionalizing the alternative learning system for the out-of-school youth, adults, persons with disability, indigenous people, and other marginalized sectors of the society. The very good news of this bill, it is now signed on the level of bicameral. So it was finished on the bicameral. The lower house and the upper house of our legislative branch have approved it, and it will be signed later. According to Senator Will, who is our champion in education, it will be submitted to the office of the president, and hopefully in the coming days, it will be a Republic Act, or it will be a fully law for the alternative learning system. And next, please. So aside from legislative initiative that we have, because we believe that our advocacy for ALE should be included in the policy level, and another one is on the budgets, of course, no? So there's no sense of policy without budget. So we involved in the alternative budget initiative with the Social Watch Philippines. So because as of now, even though that ALS has been identified by the government through the Department of Education as one of the strategic objectives in expanding the coverage of inclusive program of the government, the budget for ALS has remained at less than 1%. No? So that is one. So in ALS bill, that is one of the provisions that we recommended, and also supported by other stakeholders, that we recommend that there should be at least, take note of the word at least, it is not only 1%, but at least 1% of the total budget of the Department of Education. So it should be appropriated to alternative learning system. While this bill is still a bill, we submitted our position to the Department of Education and to the Committee on Basic Education in the lower house and the upper house of the legislation. We propose that there should be an allocation of 5 million pesos for the ALS learners, no? Because these are the adults missing education. So we propose that at least target 1 million of those disadvantaged sectors, no? Just 1 million, so that it will be proportionately to the disadvantaged sector. So this 5,000 allocation is based on the experience of the civil society organization in implementing the ALS. So we peg at 5,000 per learner for 1 million learner. So we are pushing for a 5 million for the budget of ALS. Next, please. So aside from that, because in terms of ALE, we also push for the equity-based education financing. Like for example, establishment of community learning centers of the indigenous peoples. No? So those were the figures. I just put it as this. Because also the IP people or the indigenous people are also missing the education in the Philippines. And we also push in our education equity-based education financing in the Alternative Budget Initiative or ABE, the establishment of resource center for learners with disabilities. And we also push for the 150 million learning materials for the learners with disability and 6.5 billion for the last mile school learners or those learners in the remote areas. Next slides, please. So how do we see the connection of ALE, ALS, and SDG? Okay, so if we really institutionalize the alternative learning system as a system or a parallel system to give a second chance education, especially to those adults missing an education, it will somehow answer to the goal of SDG 4, the ensure inclusive and equitable quality education to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. By the way, also in the ALS bill, we also introduced the framework of lifelong learning in implementing the alternative learning system, which is also adopted by the Department of Education and also the senators championing for this bill. So aside from that, very particularly on the SDG 4, the SDG 4.3, ensuring expanded and equitable access to all forms of post-basic education and training, because after the ALS, it could be a bridging system for higher education, ensuring relevant skill for the world of work, ensuring gender parity at all levels of education, ensuring that all youth 15 to 24 years of age have a literacy and numeracy skills, and also ensuring relevant learning for citizenship in global world. No? Because if they are knowledgeable, they are more, we give them an expanded life opportunities that they could be in the workforce, they could participate in the governance, and they could also participate in the decision making of the society. Next slide, please. So just yesterday, aside from legislation and also in budget advocacy, so we also take a look of the initiative of government initiatives in terms of the executive branch of the government. What are the initiative of these departments, departments in the government? We push for the discussion on the public investment in literacy to build back better. So we invited from the Senate, also from the Department of Labor and Employment, and also from the Literacy Coordinating Council. TESDA, that's another government agency that deals with technical vocational skills. And we also invited someone from Abigail from Employers Confederation of the Philippines, from the side of the employers, what are their initiative here. And also, of course, from the basic sector or the Partido ng Manggagawa. It's a party of labor, the labor sector in the Philippines. So what are the initiatives? We want to take a look if they have this ALE initiative in their programs. It seems they are, but more the discussion yesterday, it should really be institutionalized, it should be prioritized, it should be financed. No? So that is what. So our call yesterday is, if you invest in literacy, you expand the life opportunities of this disadvantaged and marginalized sector, and then it will help the society to reduce the poverty because they will be productive members or productive citizens of the society. So there you go. There are my colleagues on the lower part. They are my colleagues in INET. So Ramon Mapa, I think some of you know him. And Oli, part of our advocacy council. And of course, our president, Flora Arellano. So that is also how to engage the executive branch of the government. So from legislative body to executive body of the government, and also to push for the budget. And then, next slide. So last Literacy Day, September 25, we also asked ourselves. So we made a video and also posters to review the initiative of INET and of course of the government on attaining the sustainable development goals. So this is just our expression of reviewing the SDG. So are we near or far in achieving SDG? We will answer that, all of us can be. And the last slide will be
May.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'm finished. That's the last slide. So we call for edukasyong sapat, karapat-dapat at para sa lahat. That is in Filipino, safe education, inclusive, and equality for all. Thank you, Subrat.
Thanks, May. Yes, as I can see, I don't see any question in the Q&A box. I have only one question in the chat box, but let's make use of this time. Can we also hear another presentation? If I can bring my colleague Thea. Thea, would you take it forward? Over to you, Thea. And then we can deal with the question and answer. Thea, can you hear me?
Hi, Subrat. Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon from Manila. And thank you, Subrat. Thank you, Subrat, for moderating that session. And we have heard so many very good experiences of advocacy on adult learning and education at the country level. And we have seen the diverse, ALE recommendations coming from South Asia and also from Southeast Asia. And this advocacy has been going on for a long time. It is something that has been started by coalitions since the Education for All era in 1990, starting in 1990. But why do we need to engage at the regional level? So that's the discussions that we're going to have right now. ASBE has been engaging the regional platforms, such as those offered by UNESCO Bangkok. In Education 2030, we have the Asia Pacific Meeting on Education 2030, where several governments come together to discuss and to monitor the progress of the SDG 4 in Asia Pacific. So ASBE has been engaged every year in this platform, and we have managed to put forward the civil society agenda in this platform very successfully. Now, we know that Education 2030 and the SDGs require intersectoral collaboration, and this is something that ASBE has taken very seriously. We recognize the need for intersectoral collaboration and also the centrality of education in realizing the SDGs. Because of this belief, ASBE has joined the Asia Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism in 2016. Although we were not there during the founding of APRSEM, ASBE has since 2016 been very actively engaged in working with the other sectors such as the environment sector, the women's sector, the farmer sector, and all the other sectors. And our agenda was really to put in education in their agenda as well. Because we know that even within civil society, education is seen only within the confines of school. So that's why we have to convince also civil society organizations to make sure that if you're talking of environment education, you also talk about education for sustainable development. If you're talking about building institutions and transparent institutions, then we should talk about human rights education and peace and education for peace building. So therefore, while we have engaged APRSM, we have also engaged the intergovernmental platform of the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. And we, since 2017, many of the ASBE members have been very active, and they have been part of APFSD as not only as observers, but really as participants in the APFSD. Now, how is it possible that civil society and the governments and civil society together have a dialogue in APFSD? And then again, this is a work in progress. We know that there had been a lot of critique, there have been a lot of comments about civil society participation in APFSD. But we would also like to look at, what are the lessons learned, what are the next steps? And linking the national advocacy to the regional advocacy, making sure that the regional platforms reflect the ground realities and the country context. We have with us now, who will talk with us on the topic, the regional advocacy on ALE and the SDGs, UN SCAP's role, and the follow-up and next steps after the high-level political forum. Colleagues, we are very fortunate to have with us Katinka Weinberger. She is the chief of the Environment and Development Policy section of UN SCAP. And Katinka has been very active collaborating with APRSM and to ensure that civil society participation is right there in the APFSD. So we have seen her very tireless efforts, and we are glad that she can share with us some reflections on civil society engagement as well in the APFSD. So over to you, Katinka.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Excellent.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Again, thank you so much and good afternoon to all of you. And thanks for giving SCAP an opportunity to speak a little bit about follow-up and review and also next steps after the HPF, as you had indicated. Yes, my name is Katinka Weinberger. I'm the chief of the Environment and Development Policy section here at SCAP, and in that context also lead SCAP's work on follow-up and review of the 2030 agenda. I'm not sure how much I should go into detail on the structure of follow-up and review, but since you asked me to speak about SCAP's role, please allow me to also elaborate a little bit on how that links back to the national and the global level. Yeah, at national level, and I just heard in to several of the very interesting presentations just before mine. Of course, the voluntary national reviews are the primary method for countries to document and to share their efforts in implementing on the goals. And this is actively encouraged by the 2030 agenda, and it's taken up by countries. During the last HPF, of total of 47 countries, and that included only 26 first-timers had presented their voluntary national reviews, sharing their national experiences, including their successes, their challenges, and the lessons learned in implementing the 2030 agenda. But I think, as all of you will note, there is still some challenges to the VNRs. That's one of the reasons why we at SCAP provide capacity building to countries in our region to enable them to develop a stronger VNR. That support focuses on how to strengthen statistical systems and SDG monitoring and data collection efforts. We provide assistance to establishing and to improving routine SDG reporting. But we also set a strong focus on improving partnerships and cross-sectoral collaboration, and also to broaden and to institutionalize stakeholder engagement in that process. That's a strong focus of our work. And although I noted in some of the presentations that obviously more can be done, we do see a strong improvement from back to 2016 when the first VNRs were presented. And I think we will see more learning happening at country level as countries get more experienced in developing their VNRs. Now that's the national level. And at regional level, and you've just heard about it also, ESCAP organizes on an annual basis the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, the APFSD. We usually organize it in late March. This year, due to the COVID pandemic, we were later, but usually it happens in March. And that APFSD really has a central role in the follow-up and the review of implementation of the 2030 agenda here at the regional level in Asia and the Pacific. It is a central platform also because all member states, all associate members of ESCAP participate. And we invite representation from civil society, through the APRCM, of which you just heard, from private sector, from academia, supreme audit institutions, parliaments, to participate and engage both in the APFSD as well as the various associated events. Now, the APFSD is informed by 5 sub-regional forums, which we usually organize in the last quarter of the year. We just organized one for North and Central Asia in early September, and the next one for Southeast Asia will follow in late October. In a way, the mini APFSD already beginning to formulate the sub-regional perspective on the discussions to be held later at the APFSD, and some of you may have had the opportunity to contribute to these sub-regional fora as well. Now, the APFSD has a very clear terms of reference in that it is a pre-event to the high-level political forum. So at the Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, we do speak to the theme of the high-level political forum, obviously from a regional perspective. And we also discuss in depth the goals that will be reviewed at the high-level political forum. And I believe, especially I think 2 years ago when we discussed SDG 4 as one of the in-depth goals, you would have been strongly represented. And we provide a platform for countries to practice on their voluntary national reviews. Yes, and then the outcomes of the APFSD feed into the high-level political forum. In 2020, the meeting of the high-level political forum was organized on the theme Accelerated Action and Transformative Pathways, Realizing the Decade of Action and Delivery for Sustainable Development. It was organized in July and included a 3-day ministerial meeting also to present on the voluntary national reviews. This year, the HAPF was a bit different, well, obviously, because the pandemic was hitting us full force. But it was organized a bit differently also because in 2019, a global sustainable development report had been presented, which had provided 6 so-called entry points for transformative action. And these were advancing human well-being, eradicating hunger and achieving food security for all, protecting the planet and building resilience, ensuring access to sustainable energy, sharing economic benefits, and bolstering local action to accelerate implementation. And these 6 entry points provided the framework for the thematic review during the first week of the HAPF. So that was different to previous years when the focus was set on an in-depth review of the goals. But given that the HAPF had focused on these entry areas here for our region, we had also done a deeper analysis on the entry points. And allow me to please just share a couple of our major findings on these entry points. I think perhaps one of the most important was that just as our region falls very much behind in achieving the 17 SDGs, we are also very far behind in promoting, and especially in promoting and putting in place sustainable and just economies, and securing global environmental commons. These two areas were those that we found our region has made the least progress in. And of course, these are two key areas that are also emerging as key as building back better from COVID-19, right? How can we recover towards sustainable and really just economies? And how can we ensure that the destruction that we currently see going on in the environmental domain is stopped and does not facilitate the emergence of new zoonosis in the future. And we had looked at some of the underlying factors, both of progress and what has hampered progress in the countries of our region. And I think one of the most interesting findings for us was that higher income is not a cure-all solution, if you want. We had a number of low-income and lower middle-income countries in our region, which emerged as doing really well, not in all of the 6 transformative areas, but in several of the areas. And especially so, this was true for a couple of countries with special needs. So we have a couple of especially small island developing states in our region, which are, say, really at the forefront of reducing emissions, and therefore we're making a real contribution towards the global environmental commons. We also found good synergies across transformative areas. For example, it was very obvious that a country's progress on human well-being and capabilities, strongly connected to the topic that you're discussing here today, is very strongly correlated with almost all other entry points. And finally, one interesting finding was also that we didn't really see a very significant trade-offs across transformative entry points. So, for example, protecting the environmental commons does not necessarily need to compete with other goals, such as sustainable food systems or healthy nutrition. And that is a very positive sign also in going forward and, you know, achieving what we tried to communicate with the Sustainable Development Goals, that they have to be achieved in a holistic way, and we cannot pick individual goals going forward. So now linking that back to the HOPF, one of the very strong messages coming out of the HOPF was that one of the reasons the COVID-19 crisis is having such devastating impacts is that because we have not yet taken the SDGs serious. So the HOPF, in my mind, really highlighted that we can only turn the impacts, the negative impacts of the COVID-19 crisis around if we really stay true to the 2030 agenda. And this is something that we want to pick up again for next year's APFSD. Next year's APFSD will address sustainable and resilient recovery from COVID-19 in Asia and the Pacific. And I think will allow us to emphasize further that firstly, the current pandemic does not mean that we should suspend implementation and acceleration of the SDGs. It's quite the opposite. Only if we accelerate implementation, we can help to address the vulnerabilities and the inequalities that are being exposed by the current pandemic. And we would like to pick up again also on something that we already reflected on the past APFSD, is that there are a number of countries in our region which have really built a strong momentum around the SDGs and the transformations needed to achieve the SDGs. and that such experiences will be very important in ensuring that the region as a whole can build back better from the pandemic. So let me then just say that we have for the forthcoming APFSD the plan to host it in March 2021. We will provide space for the discussions I just mentioned, the opportunities to discuss how transformation, to discuss how transformation can take place in the aftermath of COVID-19. We will also provide a space for an in-depth review of the goals that have been identified to take a focus for next year's HLBF. These are goals 1 on poverty, goal 2 on food security, 3 on health, goals 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 17. So a broad number of goals that member states have agreed to focus on for 2021. We will continue to support the presentation of voluntary national reviews and also have further opportunity to discuss the strengthening of linkages between national, regional, and global follow-up and review. And perhaps just one last word before I end my intervention. I do think you had mentioned the APRCM and the approach that we take to enable a very structured engagement of civil society constituents at the APFSD. This approach, I would say, has matured over the years and has provided us with a good entry point to have a balanced representation across different constituents, across different subregions to participate in the APFSD, but with a turn towards virtual meetings. I do think that we need to give this approach another thought. It is very easy in a way to enable large numbers of participants in virtual meetings. You can link them up through YouTube. You can give many people the opportunities to listen in, to hear in, but of course that's not the same as true participation. And I don't think this is necessarily true only for representatives of civil society or other constituency groups. It is true for participation of all, including representatives of member states. And we will have to here on our side look a little bit deeper on how we can make, how we can ensure that even though the APFSD may not be held, and at this point I don't think it will be held in a physical way in 2021, that we can really continue to have it as that interactive platform for which it was known before. So let me stop here, and I'll be happy to take a couple of questions before I have to unfortunately log out to join another meeting. Thanks a lot again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Katinka, and thank you for giving us some new headlines for our engagements in the APFSD. So we will have sustainable and resilient recovery for COVID-19 in Asia Pacific as a theme. And of course, as a facilitator, let me ask how much of that will be around, making people as the frontliners for making resilient and recovery, sustainable recovery. And I think education will really, make people as part of the frontliners in making sustainable and resilient recovery. So thanks for sharing that theme. And so now I open the floor for question or any intervention. Okay, I see one hand. I'm not so sure. Enam, are you raising your hand? Is this
Yes.
an
Yes.
open forum for Katinka? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Katinka, thank you for your nice intervention. It was really enlightening. You have provided some excellent thoughts and powerful message that we need accelerated action and transformative pathway to reach achieve SDGs. Already we have passed 5 years and we have left only 10 years. So my first question is, do you think we are on track? If not, what could be the country level action and what could be the regional coordination mechanism to accelerate the action? So that is my first question. The second one is you have raised two important issues that in the regional meeting we have emphasized on economic justice and global environmental common issues. So these two are really very critical, and because of the COVID pandemic, the life and livelihood of the marginalized people is become very difficult, and it will really affect the health, education, and well-being besides income and livelihood of the people. So the among the six entry point, I would like to keep my focus on human well-being and capability. So schools are closed since March. Only few countries could open their schools. Children are traumatized and learning continue to become a challenge. Well, in many countries, there are alternative distance learning modalities of education, particularly using television, radio, mobile phone, and internet. And among them, internet become very catchy and savvy word for many actors. But now we can see that only 15 around 15% of the household has access to internet, and about half of the household in country like Bangladesh has access to television. So it is creating another kind of digital divide and learning divide. So the people from the marginalized family are becoming more vulnerable because of the pandemic. And on the other hand, the government will try to show their performance, particularly focusing on some quick key performance indicator which can be achieved with minimum effort. But reaching the last mile is very difficult. So that is one critical issue we are foreseeing that how we can address it. And my last issue is you are talking about the HLPF, APFSD, and APRSM. All those are very good platform, and we are being engaged in those platform. And you have indicated that it will be virtual, and virtual will provide space for many people to participate. But face-to-face is very critical. We need to have face-to-face meeting, and in virtual meeting, we find one big challenge that the member state gets a slot for speak. If they miss somehow, they are being called again and again. But if CSO miss the slot in first round, it is very difficult to get the slot once again. So we can see another round of deprivation between the member state intervention and civil society intervention. So how to balance between those are some of my key questions. And finally, I would like to emphasize that we need to go beyond the average. So average performance may influenced by the high performer, but we need to look at the what is doing by the bottle 20% or last quintile. So that is the equalizer for leaving no one behind and setting the transformative system. So what could be some of the key takeaway from your mind that as civil society we should focus on when we engage with UN agencies and our country level duty bearers? Thank you. Sorry for the long intervention.
Okay, over to you, Katinka.
Okay, yeah, thank you for excellent, excellent
Yes.
questions, and I'm not sure I'm able to address them all, but let me try. Are we on track? No, we're not on track, and I think all past SDG progress reports have shown that just based on the indicators that are available to assess progress on SDG targets and goals, our region is lagging behind on most of the goals. If you look at the region on average, this is not country level data, the situation may be different from country to country. What needs to be done? I think we have a pretty good idea on what needs to be done. I talked about this need for real transformative change before, right? And I think many technical solutions are indeed available, but what we still see lacking is this really strong collaboration between governments and other stakeholders, not everywhere. As I said before, we see some really good examples emerging from our region. We have documented them in our past report. But I think one of the issues to call for at national level is this quest to collaborate, civil society not being the watchdog, so to say, or not only the watchdog, but really moving forward together with governments to collaborate, to identify a clear direction together. Secondly, I also think transformation will not happen without deep structural changes. And already we are seeing that due to COVID, some of these barriers are actually being removed. Not across the board, but again, we see really good examples across the region. So these barriers that we have to basic healthcare, social protection, governments are now putting measures in place to at least provide a basic social safety net, right? So that's one of the barriers. Before, nobody thought that would be possible. Third, I think the pandemic is a real and a deep crisis. There is no talking away of that. It has affected millions of people who were before just bordering poverty line have been thrown back into poverty. And I think the worst is yet to come. But on the other side, it has also shown us that there's opportunity for change. I just spoke about this basic healthcare provisions, social protection floors. We also see, and you spoke about the increasing digital divide, right? But on the other side, we also see emerging local ICT solutions coming up to address inclusive and distant learning. So I think it's really about identifying and seeing those pockets of success amongst people, amongst institutions, and scaling them up. And that's one of the roles that the UN can actually play, in identifying them and showcasing on what of these elements are useful to take up, to scale up. And finally, I think we shouldn't forget SDG progress is a complex material. And even more so in the aftermath of COVID-19. And we will continue to balance the immediate needs, the long-term needs, common needs, individual needs. And again, here the UN has a real role in bringing the various stakeholders together, in bringing different constituents together. I'm talking local to provincial, to national, to regional level, as well as different constituents involving civil society and government agencies, as well as facilitating conversations across different government agencies. And these elements I just mentioned, they still seem to be holding up progress. Again, I don't think there is no chance for us to not achieve the 2030 agenda by 2030, but I do think that we all need to work. And I also think that we will have setbacks, more setbacks to COVID-19. But I think finally it is on all of us to continue working together to make this happen. And yeah, let me stop here. Unfortunately, I really have to move. I am participating in a workshop on the future of Asia and the Pacific. So exactly the topics that I just spoke to. But I thank you again very much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katinka, and we look forward to working with UNESCO in the forthcoming APFSD, even though it's going to be virtual again. And we look forward to more processes also at the country level, perhaps, because that there are some countries who are now open in terms of face-to-face. So, and thank you very much for sharing your time with us. So
Thank
we
you,
give
and
you
bye-bye,
several times.
everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, colleagues, that has been a very good session with Katinka. And right now you have noticed that we are running very late. And so we have adjusted the program. So now we'll go straight to panel 2. Of course, Katinka already made her presentation. But before going to panel 2, let me just go through the chat box. There are many questions that you have raised. So let me just read them, and maybe for us to reflect on before we go and into the second panel. And some of these questions, I believe, are also related to the presentations that will be done at that will be done by the two countries who we have invited to this afternoon. So one of the question is said that from Flora Arellano of INET Philippines. She said that most governments are good in terms of agreeing to international agreements, but poor in implementing their unities at the country level. So that is, again, a problem of implementation. Now, from Rene Raya, he is asking, some countries have done a bit better in ALE, in Lao PDR, for example, and maybe in Indonesia and Thailand and China, of course. What could explain such better performance? Is it just political commitment or level of economic development or external support? Or what other can account for such performance? So we ask this again, what makes the difference? How is it possible in other countries, and in other countries we are still struggling for ALE policies? I think these questions can be answered later by our government representatives from Malaysia and the Philippines. So, okay. And from the Facebook, you know that we are live on Facebook, and there is a question from Umar bin Tahir. He said that government should also focus on recognizing informal learning or informal education. What do you think about this? And I agree, because there are a lot of informal learning now happening. We are using watch parties, we are using the media, and we have seen how coalitions have maximized social media to do awareness raising and to disseminate information. So how can the government help in this respect? So that's the question. And from Tajikistan, we have the comment from Nasibakon Ganieva, and she said, for Tajikistan, in the Central Office of the Ministry of Education and Science of Tajikistan, there is no department or division dealing with short-term training courses, adult learning, education, and other types. More than 260 different non-state training centers licensed by the Ministry of Education and Science are practically not managed, and the statistics of their the data from their activities are not collected. There's also no study on the areas of there's no study of this data, and policy measures are not developed. As a result, there is no indication of ALE in Tajikistan VNR, which was done in 2017. So that's why the lack of data also, because of that, ALE is not, we don't see the ALE in many of the VNRs of the countries. And as also reported by Anita Dighe. I think the other questions have already been answered, the questions to Nupur, and of course, there is also a question to the Philippines in May, so I'm not going to read them now. But let me end with Nasiba's question, which brings us to the next session. And the next session is about looking at systems approach to ALE. Why systems approach? Because, many of us have been ALE practitioners for a long time. We have been adult education and popular education practitioners for a long time. And we have seen that ALE has often been considered as a program. It has been approached in a projectized manner. Like, if you have extra funds, why don't you put it in literacy, like that? So we have become a projectized ALE has become a projectized program. But what we want to see happening and listening to the discussions from the start, from Johan's input that ALE is important for SDGs, we need to have a systems approach to ALE. And ASPE believes that this is very imperative. And so we go to the next panel and we will discuss how other countries were able to institute ALE as part of their strategy. We will see how these governments embedded ALE in their development plans, how they have legislated ALE not only in their at the national level and also at the local level. We have in this panel 2 countries which we can consider, very much advanced in integrating lifelong learning and in particular ALE in their SDGs implementation. So we have with us the representative from the Ministry of Higher Education, Malaysia, and we also have the representative from the Department of Education from the Philippines. So let me introduce them one by one. And of course, each presenter is given 10 minutes, and then we will have the open forum afterwards. And let me moderate that, and hopefully it's not as chaotic as the presidential debate that we have seen earlier in the day. Okay, so I will start with Malaysia, and the topic is for ALE strategies within the SDGs, and we will listen to lifelong learning within the SDG architecture, the Malaysian experience. In Malaysia, lifelong learning is considered the 3rd pillar of human capital development. And through the years, Malaysia has instituted lifelong learning or LLL policies in its blueprint and master plan, as well as embedding LLL in the SDG architecture. So with us, we are fortunate once more to have Dr. Maud Rashahidi. He is the Senior Academic Director of the Ministry of Higher Education Department of Polytechnic and Community College, Malaysia. Thank you so much, Dr. Maud, for sharing your time with us. And so the floor is yours. Over to you. Thank you. Dr. Rashahidi, are you there? There. Okay. Welcome. Dr. Rashahidi, sharing your screen. I am sorry, we cannot hear you.
Thea, he's written that he's getting he has a technical problem with his mic now, and he can't hear us either. He's written in his chat box. I don't know if you want to go to the next speaker first while Dr. Rashahidi sorts out his technical problem.
Okay, Dr. Rashahidi, we will come back to you. We will start with the presentation from the pics. Okay, is that fine? Okay. So, waiting for Dr. Rashahidi, we will continue with the presentation from the Philippines. And in the Philippines, the topic will be investing in ALE in SDG 4 as a
Hello, hello. I'm on now. Can everybody listen to me?
Dr. Shahidi, yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can everybody listen to me?
Yes. Are you able to? Yes. Okay. So now we can also see you. Okay, we'll proceed with your presentation.
Okay. I'm now sharing my presentation. Okay. Okay. I'm
Yes.
doing my screen share. Can everybody look at the presentation now?
No,
Jay.
we're still waiting for your presentation.
Okay, this one. Okay.
I am sorry, but we cannot see your presentation.
You
Not
cannot
yet.
see me.
I can
This is
see you.
my PowerPoint.
I can see you, but not your presentation, Dr. Rashidi.
Oh my Lord. I put
Can
my.
we? Yes. Can
Okay.
we go to the?
Can
Okay.
we go? Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, just a minute.
Dr. Shahidi, can we go to the Philippines first while you sort your
Okay.
technical?
Yeah. I think better go to the Philippines first.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so. So now we will go to the Philippines, and I would just like to make a short introduction. That in the Philippines, we have a very good local government code of 1991, which allows local government to invest in education. Local governments are allowed, are mandated to collect special education fund, which in turn local governments use for education programs at the community level. And then also 1991 is very important in the Philippines because that was also the time when the literacy coordinating council been created. So these two very important republic acts have changed the landscape of education at the local level. So now we are fortunate to have with us the chief of the secretariat of the local coordinating council of the Department of Education. And colleagues, please let's welcome Chief Eric Mendoza, representing the Department of Education. So over to you, Mr. Eric.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Warm greetings from the Philippines. I'm so privileged to have been given the opportunity to share with you our experience from the Department of Education. I am representing our Undersecretary of the Department of Education, Undersecretary Diosdado San Antonio, who was supposed to be here, but unfortunately, due to some very important engagement with the Secretary, he was not able to join us. Nevertheless, I'm going to share with you the experience that we have in the Philippines. Allow me to share my presentation. I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, I can see your screen now, Mr. Eric.
Thank you. All right. So just a few points that we would like to share with everybody on the strategies of the Department of Education. First is the creation of the Indigenous Peoples Education Office. Second, I'm going to discuss very briefly the strengthening of the non-formal education in the Philippines. Thirdly, how we pivot from access to quality. And lastly, how stakeholder engagement is being utilized in order for us to be able to provide learning and education to our adult population. Let's start with the establishment or creation of the IP Education Office in the Department of Education. We know very well that some of the adult non-literates are in the IP communities, indigenous peoples communities, who are living in far-flung barangays and mountainous regions. So what the DepEd does through a DepEd order was to create an office which will serve as a focal unit of the department on IP education. This focal unit in the planning is utilized in the planning, implementation, coordination, and monitoring of various policy program concerns related to indigenous people's education and engagement with indigenous cultural communities, civil society, and other government agencies. This office is also tasked to develop and recommend policy standards and actions to the Department of Education Management to enhance DepEd's implementation of education initiatives for our IPs, for indigenous people learners. Also, it is also responsible for the coordination with various stakeholders and partners and serves as a clearinghouse for all IP initiatives so that all adult learners or non-literates in these communities will be given right intervention on literacy. Second, Ms. Maycinco of INAT Philippines has very well explained to you this program of the Department of Education. This is the non-formal education program of the Department of Education, which we don't call a program. No, it's a system. And what we do, since the secretary, Leonor Magtolis Briones, assumed her position at the department as the secretary, one of her flagship programs or agenda is the strengthening of the non-formal education, which we call the alternative learning system. The ALS, or the alternative learning system, has three basic programs. The basic literacy program, this is for the non-literates, and that includes our adult populace. Second, it's the accreditation and equivalency program. This is part of the continuing education program of the Department of Education, wherein not only out-of-school children, youth, and adults are being given, or not only youth and children, but also adults are given opportunity to be given certification to pass the elementary and the high school level. And thirdly, the department also launched the ALS EST, or the ALS EST, which is on education, skills, and training. All these strategies are anchored towards the quality basic education the department is aiming to reach. And also, the ALS was strengthened through the launching of the ALS 2.0 or ALS 2.0, wherein a task force was formed at the department to really take care of the needs in terms of literacy and basic education of our non-formal education learners, including our adults. Also, ALS is being discussed already in high-level policy through the ALS law that was mentioned by Ms. Maycinco a while back regarding the institutionalization of non-formal education in the Philippines, which will include a lot of interventions, programs, and mechanisms in order to reach the unreached and ensure that no one is left behind, especially those who are marginalized, vulnerable, and excluded. Next. The next strategy is the Sulong Edukalidad, which means towards quality education. So this is one of the main programs or strategies of the department. And this is a shift from access to quality because the department has three main points in ensuring that quality basic education is delivered. The access, second is the quality, and third is governance. So the department now pivoted or shifted from access to quality education through the Sulong Edukalidad program. And it has a KITE program, which has 4 components. The first component is letter K, which is on curriculum. K-12 curriculum review and update. Number 2, on learning environment. This is the improvement of the learning environment. Classrooms, community learning centers for our non-formal education learners, which include adults. The third one is on teachers. The department wants to upskill and reskill our teachers not only the teachers at the formal education sector, but also at the non-formal, training the literacy workers. And lastly, the engagement of the stakeholders. Perhaps by the stories that you heard from the INAT Philippines, which is a very active member of the council, the close collaboration between CSOs and the Department of Education. So this is further strengthened that the stakeholders are engaged in order to have their support and collaboration to be able to do research, develop policies, and develop literacy programs. Next is the strengthening of stakeholder participation through the Philippine Forum for Quality Education. We call it EDUC Forum, wherein everybody is gathered, convened together, not just once, but there are like several groups. Some deal with the curriculum, another group deals with learning resources, etc. And they always take into consideration the needs of our vulnerable and disadvantaged learners. So the consultation and collaboration of stakeholders together with the Department of Education aims to strategically discuss issues, plan, and address critical concerns in the implementation of quality education. Another one that is being implemented by DepEd as a strategy is the Brigada Escuela. This Brigada Escuela is like community participation in schools and community learning centers, wherein parents, local government units, civil society organizations, and the whole community is being engaged in order to help DepEd, and we call it Bayanihan, work hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder together to achieve our quality education goals. So how did we respond to COVID-19? These are the responses of the Department of Education. The development of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. So this was developed to provide guidance to the department on how to deliver education, formal and non-formal, through alternative learning system in this time of the pandemic, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of all learners, teachers, and the personnel of the Department of Education. Aside from the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan, or the LCP, we call it the Basic Education LCP, which schools and community learning centers also have, we also focused on curriculum adjustment. So we adjusted the curriculum. The department selected the most essential learning competencies of learners in the formal school and also learners at the non-formal level or system of education. Third, to respond to this pandemic, the department explored and invested on various alternative learning delivery modalities through SLMs. SLM stands for self-learning modules, because as mentioned earlier, there's a divide in terms of technology. So most of our learners, both at the schools and CLCs or community learning centers, opted to chose to use the modules, the printed self-learning modules while studying at their learning centers and schools. DepEd also developed TV lessons, and these lessons and sessions are aired on government-owned televisions all over the Philippines. Radio is also being utilized, as well as the internet. One of the most important responses of the department is on policy development. So at the national level and even at the local levels, various offices of the department create their own policy relevant and adaptive to the needs of their learners. And lastly, the whole of community approach, the stakeholder participation, everybody is engaged. Regarding policy development, Ms. May of INAT Philippines also mentioned about one of the major milestones of the department, which is the passage, hopefully within the next weeks, the passage of the non-formal education law that we call Alternative Learning System Law, strengthening the non-formal education, which includes our learning, the learning and education of our adults. So right now, 24.6 million learners have enrolled in the formal school. And in the alternative learning system, 390,703 learners have already enrolled. And their education is really being given importance that nobody, education must continue and nobody is left behind. So we do our best to really bring them back to school and provide them learning interventions, if not in schools, in the community learning centers. So what does the Literacy Coordinating Council do? The LCC has this National Literacy Awards program, because we believe that the Department of Education cannot do it alone. We believe in the power of collaboration and the support of our local government units, the support of our civil society organizations, non-government organizations, faith-based organizations, private partners. They really contribute a lot, greatly. They have great impact in the access and the quality of the education that we provide both to our formal and non-formal learners. So what we do at the LCC, we recognize outstanding community-based literacy programs. These are not school-based programs. These are community-based literacy programs. So what we do is we award them, we recognize them, and we provide them with the needed support in order for them to be able to continue their literacy initiatives in their respective communities. And mind you, we have already awarded so far 333 LGUs and NGUs who have outstanding literacy programs. It has 3 levels. The first one is the Outstanding Literacy Program. If they win 3 times, they will be given the Hall of Fame Award. And if they won the Hall of Fame Award after 1 year, after validation, they will receive the Special Award of Excellence in Literacy. So a lot of government units, local government units and non-government organizations and civil society organizations are being awarded by LCC in their best practices on how they implement community-based literacy programs, which focus on not only out-of-school and children, but also adults. These are just the winners. The others who joined, who have also good literacy practices, are not yet included in this number. So you can imagine how many groups and organizations and units from the local government are really working together to ensure that the adult learners and the needs of our adults in the communities at the grassroots levels are being taken care of. So this is my second to the last slide. This is the picture of Aida. Aida is the eldest among 6 siblings who had to stop schooling when she was in the 4th grade. And that was in 1965. She only finished grade 4. He is a native of a very remote city in the Philippines. And at 56 years old, she was able to finish her elementary education through our non-formal education called the Alternative Learning System. She passed the accreditation and equivalency test. This is just one of the many faces of hope, of success, that really, when we work together, the government and the civil society organizations and all the stakeholders of education and learning, we will succeed and we will have fruits, beautiful fruits of our labor. And lastly, the message of our beloved Secretary Lenore Magtoles Briones that she would like to impart to all of us. She said, truly, no amount of challenge can cripple a strong institution if mind and spirit of its people become bigger than any challenge, even this dreadful pandemic. So may we all continue to work together, government and non-government, so that we can achieve the sustainable development goals and we can provide our adults with quality education. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank you personally for this opportunity to share our brief experience on this endeavor. If you want to know more about the Literacy Coordinating Council, you may visit our Facebook page and visit our website at www.lcc.deped.gov.ph. You may also email us if you want to know more and to collaborate with us, lcc@deped.gov.ph. Once again, thank you for the opportunity and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Chief Eric Mendoza of the Literacy Coordinating Council of the Department of Education, Philippines. And I think your presentation addressed some of the questions that we in the chat box. So one, policy and legislation on AIL are very important. And then we also said that to implement those policies and the legislation, we have to have an architecture. And within the Department of Education, we have seen structures that are particularly focused on providing AIL, such as the IP education department, the alternative learning system, the Bureau of Alternative Learning System. And this, being part of the education system, then they are able to be financed, and also they are able to implement programs related to AIL. So thank you so much for that. We will open the floor for discussions later after the presentation from Malaysia, Mr. Eric Mendoza. Okay, we will come back to you. Okay, so now let's go back and listen to Dr. Rashahidi. I hope you are now ready, Dr. Rashahidi, to present the experience from Malaysia. Dr. Rashahidi?
Yeah, I'm not ready. Thank you for waiting, for bearing with me for technical difficulties about 15 minutes ago. Okay, share. Okay, I'm now sharing my file. Just a minute. Okay. Can you see my file?
Yes, I can see your slide now, Dr. Rashahidi.
Thank you, my friend, my officer, good officer, Muazim, for helping me. Okay, thank you for waiting. Okay, from Malaysia, we have this presentation, lifelong learning within the SDG architecture, our Malaysian experience. Okay, before I go, why we choose to have lifelong learning in Malaysia? The answer is first because it relates to TVET. Why TVET? Because TVET has two missions. First is to promote individual opportunities. If you give them good education, you will eliminate poverty. Later, it will erase hunger. Later, it will establish good health and well-being for the people. At the end of the day, it will reduce inequality among people, and will lend them to decent work and good support economic growth of our nation. And at the end of the day, everybody will be in harmony. That's a good reason. And for the country, it will promote economic growth of our nation. Okay, I will skip the definition of what is lifelong learning. I think everybody knows this. Okay, to make lifelong learning important agenda for our nation, the government has declared that lifelong learning as the third pillar of our human capital development for Malaysia. Beside the basic education, under the Ministry of Education, we have tertiary education. Recently, in February, the government re-established the Ministry of Education. And we have the third pillar is lifelong learning. So under tertiary education, we have community college education, and the community college is responsible to champion the lifelong learning education in Malaysia, together with other ministries in the nation. Lifelong learning is supported with so many documents. Starting back in 2007, we have this what we call National Higher Education Strategy Plan. Okay, and then in 2011, we have another document, a blueprint on incorporation of lifelong learning for Malaysia 2011 to 20. And back in 2015, the government launched another blueprint for specifically for higher education. We have two blueprints launched in 2015. One's for basic education, another one is for higher education. And in this blueprint, under shift number 3 or third thrust, entitled Nation for Lifelong Learners, specifically on lifelong learning. Okay, supported by the 11th Malaysia Plan under Chapter 5, Accelerating Human Capital Development for an Advanced Nation. And specifically, they mentioned lifelong learning in this chapter. Okay. Oh, what's wrong? Okay. Just a minute. Okay. 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 In Malaysia, we have divided our lifelong learning, implementation of our lifelong learning in two phases. Phase 2002 to 2012, we call it an outreach phase. And from 2013 to 2017, we call it extension phase. In the outreach phase, okay, we have registered about or more than 1 million participants from 2002 to 2012 over the 10 years period of time. Okay, so about on average it's about 100,000 participants per year. Of course, the years of our lifelong learning, we have tough time to get everybody involved, but later stage, everybody more people come in join our lifelong learning programs. And in 2012, we have about 176,000 participants. And if you can see, about 9% of them join us or join our lifelong learning program more than twice. Okay. And a note here, a study done in 2012 found that the community has high confidence level with the credibility, relevance, and quality of PSH lifelong learning program. PSH is in Malay, but in English is lifelong learning programs conducted at community colleges. That I mentioned before, community colleges is just it is like a polytechnic, but it's more hands-on than the polytechnic during the implementation phase. Okay, at the extension phase, you can see the achievement of lifelong learning in Malaysia. From 2013, we have 721 participants. As compared to 2017, we have more than 3 million participants. So an increase of about 77%. Okay, and for everybody's knowledge, the 3 ministries, we have 14 ministries that involved in lifelong learning in Malaysia, but 3 main ministries with the largest participation. One, Ministry of Human Resource, and another one, Ministry of Education, and the last one is Ministry of Health. We have about 11 other ministries participating in our lifelong learning programs. This is the detail. This table shows the detail of our participation among the people from the year 2015 to the year 2017. Okay, detailed number by ministry, by year. Okay, and on the left, it shows that about 7.3 million participants joined our program from the year 2015 to the year 2017. If we add up 2.83 million in 2015 with 2.3 million in 2016 and 2.16 million in 2017, it come out to be 7.929 million, okay, for the past 3 years. Okay, we also go to the industries, so that people in industry, people who don't have a qualification, don't have skills, can have access to our lifelong learning program. Okay, we have this what we call time sector privatization. This is done in our polytechnic system, where the private sectors can come to our colleges and our polytechnic, and they can send their workers to our lab and participate in our lifelong learning program. You can see back in 2017, from 2000, the year 2000 to 17, we have about 100,000 participants participate in about 2,000 programs. Okay, and on the right side, okay, in 2017, we have over 17,000 participants as compared to 18, we have more than 27,000 participants, an increase of about almost 40%. Okay, this is an example of the collaboration between our technical institution and the industry. We have one polytechnic in northern region of Peninsular Malaysia. We call Polytechnic Metro Tasik Glogor. They have collaboration with Flextronic Penang, Sdn Bhd, and also Flextronic Indonesia, Batam. This is an example of participation from industries with our technical institution in Malaysia. So, of course, the impact is these people will get their academic qualification at the end of the day. From SPM is just like the O level in the British education system. They will have their diploma, and they will get their salary increase by their employer, and of course the industry will recognize their training. Okay, this is relating to our blueprint earlier. Okay, the right hand side, you can see the bulk incorporation of lifelong learning in Malaysia. We hope to get 50% of our lifelong learning participation rate in 2020, hoping that 50% of this potential 20.6 million potentials to get into our program will, we will have 50% target. But I'm not sure whether we can achieve that number yet, because we have yet to get to do some auditing. Okay. And about youth, the involvement of youth in our program, mainly done in our community colleges. Now we have 104 community colleges around the country, focusing on our disabled people, the single mother, the youth, the senior citizen, the engineers people, the orang asli is the indigenous people, the B40, those who are in the income group of 40% and below. Okay, the B40. Okay, so the overall from 2013 to 2017, we can gather about 1.35 million participants to participate in the top 10 programs in catering and dining, stitches and clothing, self-development and motivation, languages, beauty and makeup, creative art, and so on. Not only that, the government also try to equip our disadvantaged people, our less fortunate people, with entrepreneurship. So through MDEC is the Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation. They have two special programs. They call e-usahawan. E-usahawan is e-entrepreneurship. Okay, e-entrepreneurship. You can see in 2016 there are about 3,000 participants, and in 2017 we have slightly less number, 2,156 participants in e-usahawan initiative. And in e-Rezeki is, we have 216, in 216 we have more than 1,500 participants involved in the program, as compared to 217 we have more than 4,000 participants participated in the program. Okay, we have high impact. They have high impact with these two initiatives. One of the successful initiative by MDEC, e-Rizki. Of course, we have challenges in implementing our LLL in our country. Okay, first is we have so many ministries, so we have problem to coordinate. Okay, we have problem to coordinate 40 industries just emerging. So the problem is to create one-stop center database to collect all the data. The implementing agency have to supply data to the leading agency so that we can update the cabinet of the implementation of our LLL every year. Another one is to empower the lifelong learning for success, to empower our institution so that when the government invests the money, they have to make sure that there is success at the end of the day. The third one is the recognition for employment of this. When they participate in lifelong learning education, participants usually they want their qualification to be recognized. So industries, private sector, they are quite new to this idea of lifelong learning initiative. But I think as years go on, they will be us in recognizing LLL initiative by the government. Okay, the next one is the corporate institution support and aids. Some of the institution they have yet to 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 help to support the idea of lifelong learning. Some of them they think lifelong learning is is not comparable to the formal education in terms of qualification, in terms of the training. Maybe they think it's a second class type of training. So that's the challenge for us. Okay.
Dr. Rashidi, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Yes, you have 1 minute to wrap up your presentation.
Okay,
Yes,
this one,
so sorry.
this is
Yeah,
just for
this is
reading,
really
okay?
very good.
This
So
is for
thanks.
reading. I don't have to elaborate for this, okay? Way forward. So the government plans to have next phase of national lifelong learning policy from 2021 to 2030. This is they are in the process of developing the policy. Okay, okay. The new roadmap for 2020-2025, the government, so they have 5 missions for digital. They have 5 missions for lifelong learning. The first one is to develop digital savvy society. Now, all this while, they don't have this element of 4.0 in our lifelong learning, but nowadays, the government insists of having IR 4.0 program or activities in our lifelong learning program. Okay. Another one is the mission to improve quality of life and, I cannot see, life and support for our workers and people. The third one, to increase collaboration with industries in line with IR 4.0 agenda. The fourth one is to strengthen entrepreneurship that I told you in the earlier slide. And the last one, to empower lifelong Islamic education program to involve those from religious colleges, religious schools, so that they become part of the mainstream activities in our education system. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rashidi. This is really very rich sharing from Malaysia, and we cannot thank you enough. I think, yeah, your sharing on the roadmap and also the importance of intergovernment collaboration is something that we can learn from. And of course, to address the issue that was raised earlier by Niba from Tajikistan, the importance of gathering data on ale from different agencies. I think we will continue our dialogue with Malaysia and see how this can be done in other countries, such as in Central Asia. So thank you, Dr. Rashidi. So now I mentioned, yes, thank you so much. Uh, I have mentioned that I am on the chat box that we don't have time for open forum. We have very good presentations from two countries, Philippines and Malaysia, and it's so unfortunate that we don't have time. And as you would have noticed, we are already almost an hour over time in our webinar. So without further ado, colleagues, let me call Jose Roberto Guevara, who is the president of the International Council for Adult Education, to give us a synthesis. Robbie, as we call him, is also the immediate past president of ASBE, and he also teaches at RMIT Australia. So over to you, Robbie, for the synthesis.
Can I just check that I can share my screen?
Yes, please.
Can we check that?
Yes, I can see your screen, Robbie.
Just checking you can see the PowerPoint itself?
Yes, yes, I can see it.
Okay. Thank you very much again for all the presentations this afternoon. So I'll try to do justice to those rich presentations this afternoon. And so, synthesis of ALE and the SDGs towards building resilient lifelong systems. Okay, and so I have 5 arguments to propose. First, the pandemic has resulted in the multiple crises that has made visible the interconnectedness but the stark realities of inequalities in a region. Second is, however, the pandemic has also highlighted our ability as civil society and ALE practitioners to respond to this interconnected crisis. Third, the response is informed by our deep understanding as ALE practitioners, but also our commitment to education systems and our continuing engagement with the global platforms like the SDGs. Fourth, these responses have demonstrated our resilience as individuals, organizations, but also of the education system. And fifth, I challenge at the end, I pose is how do we harvest this individual and organizational resilience as an opportunity for strengthening and transforming our education systems to become really more resilient lifelong learning systems. So in terms of the first aspect, I'm going to go quickly because this is very obvious to most of you that the pandemic really exposed a lot of interconnected multiple crises that has been existing in terms of health, in terms of travel, in terms of our education system. In terms of our education system, but also in terms of the social gaps and the economic gaps that exist in our region, but also more globally. So this has been there, but I think part of the role that ALE has played is not just to make this visible, but to be able to use this understanding really to be able to generate some action. And so because of this multiple crises, the argument we're making is that the pandemic has actually made us respond to this. And I won't again go to this, but I'd like to highlight 3 areas of responses that are worth looking at. One is where I am in Australia, in Melbourne. Adult Learning Australia submitted a Senate Select Committee report on COVID-19 that identified the important role of ALE. I was fortunate enough to hear the stories of young people in YAR that ASBE hosted a few months ago now, or last month, in terms of how young people responded to the crisis. But also I'd like to call attention to stories in the DVV where you will have our own ICAI colleagues sharing their own stories about the response to the pandemic around the world. So when you have time, please read through this web-based resources. But I think one of the things, just to illustrate, and I have to cite Nani here, Nani made this presentation as part of the PRIA because what I wanted to highlight was that, yes, the COVID crisis is new. Yes, it's a pandemic, but we have tools to analyze this as educators. We have tools to be able to communicate this more effectively. And Nani clearly summarized this when she used the Delors report, the pillars of learning: to do, to know, to be, to live together. And Nani said to build back, but I also say to transform oneself and our society. So I acknowledge Nani's contribution to this in a sense that she said it was important for us to know about the pandemic. It was important for us to do learning together in the family. It was important for us to be supportive of people in crisis. Particularly, she focused on the mental health part. But it was also important for us to live together and recognize that people will be impacted differently by the crisis. And so, but most of all, these are all reactions, okay? What we need to be able to do is to use the crisis as an opportunity to transform the very issues that we identified at the start, the inequalities that are there, okay, the gaps that are there. This is not just to transform how we learn, but this is to transform why we learn. And so I acknowledge Nani for this. But my argument also is that it is important not to learn about, but it's important to learn through, that the crisis is a moment for learning. And for us as adult educators, what I'm trying to say is, how do we capture this moment? How do we nurture what we find in this moment to be able to continue to do the valuable work that we do? So that's the second point that I make. The third point we make now goes into what you all shared a lot. The response has been informed by a deep understanding as AIL practitioners of our education systems and our continuing engagement with the global platforms like the SDGs. So this was the heart of the session today. And so I'm not going to go quickly, I'm not going to go deeply, but rather quickly, because you just heard these presentations. First of all, we can use COVID-19 as a way for us to be able to map how the SDGs and the understanding of the SDGs is actually important to understand the impact of COVID. But also, not just to understand the impact of COVID to the SDGs, it also shows us a hard truth. As UNDESA says, we could have been better prepared for the crisis had we really addressed these global goals. But yes, that's wonderful to say looking back. Looking forward, we can make the same argument for our education systems, not just for our health systems. We should use this new understanding, in particular, how through AIL, we can help learn our way out of the crisis. And this is what Johan just said. The SDGs, the core principle of the SDGs of the rights, but the interlinkages of AIL with the SDGs, particularly again, this is a mapping that they did for the SDGs on COVID, but what I'm trying to say is this same mapping we can use to look at the interlinkages of the SDGs. And Johan specifically spoke about 8, 10, 13, and 16, but I'm sure people in the room, your work would relate to water, to gender, to poverty, to health. So I think we should use the SDGs as a tool through AIL to learn our way out of this crisis. We shared experiences from the VNR reviews from India, Nepal, Vietnam, the Philippines, but also the SCAP, and hopefully this APFSD theme for 2021 on sustainable and resilient recovery will be something that we will address much better because of the experience of COVID. But also our last two presentations on Malaysia and the Philippines were very rich in terms of not just about, again, a reactive response. There is an inherent systemic way, okay? A systemic way for us to be able to recognize that our education system was able to respond, but we need for our education system not just to be able to be responsive, but also to transform for future crisis. And so I acknowledge and I congratulate ASPE again for launching the report. The picture is there in the middle of that interlinkages between AIL and the SDGs. Maria, this was a webinar that I mentioned earlier that Nani spoke at, and Maria, I think, captures, and this was in April, captures the essence of why the COVID response was actually valuable. and why it worked in some countries. And Maria says countries which had prioritized lifelong learning systems within public provisioning have been able to respond to the pandemic in creative ways by utilizing AL tools. And so again, using our capacity as adult learners and adult learning educators, we were able to respond. This need to go online, this need for parents to teach their children, grandparents to teach their children. This aspect of intergenerational learning is inherent in our blood as AL practitioners. But it has to be within a systems approach. It has to be within a rights-based public provisioning approach, while it, of course, has to be a creative approach. And we recognize that a lot of this work has fallen on the laps of NGOs and civil society and communities. Okay, so I acknowledge and recognize the wonderful statements of our Malaysian and Philippine colleagues in government that they say we need to do this together. Okay, so we need to see this as a systems approach, and we need to do this together. Finally, second to the last, I would try to introduce, therefore, these responses can have demonstrated our resilience as individuals and organizations, but we want to look at resilience of our education system. I've been talking about resilience for a number of years now, and I wanted to look at resilience not just as a systemic reaction, but resilience has always had a connection with 4 areas or 4 disciplines in terms of psychology, being a psychological trait to be flexible, in terms of disaster relief, to be able to bounce back to a known normal condition, and engineering, to be able to withstand stress, for example, in environment and ecology where I come from, to be able to be adaptable. I highlight bounce back to a known normal condition because I will revisit that statement later. So resilience is a reaction, resilience is a response, but as educators, I argue that inherent to all these responses, resilience is as much about learning. So what does it mean for resilience to be considered not just a response, but resilience as learning? I've looked at resilience as learning and therefore argue that people identified to be resilient, they said there are 3 capacities: coping capacities, adaptive capacities, and transformative capacities. Coping capacities, we heard a lot this afternoon, learning to cope with and overcome adversities. So we react. Adaptive capacities are more like, what can we learn from our past experiences? Again, being from the Philippines, typhoons and all that, we learn from something that happened before. But again, for most of us, COVID is new. It's a surprise, okay? And therefore, what can we transform? Not just for the moment, but transformative capacities are about crafting a set of institutions and policies that foster individual welfare and sustainable social robustness towards future crisis. And so what we just spoke about this afternoon or this evening, as far as where I am, is already looking at that systemic approach that does not just cope, doesn't just adapt, but actually transform because we learn from these capacities. And so these are not separate. I would say there's nothing wrong with coping. We need to be able to cope. We need to be able to adapt. But if we see that as a spectrum of resilience as learning, then we will be able to know that we are moving from coping to adapting to transforming, which I think is key, okay? Which is key to this idea of resilient lifelong learning systems. And so let me conclude and say the challenge I pose is, how do we harvest? How do we harvest this individual organizational resilience capacities we've developed, okay, as an opportunity to strengthen and transform our education systems to become more really resilient lifelong learning systems? A study of the World Bank that was done, okay, in terms of the impact of the COVID pandemic, basically said there is an opportunity provided by the crisis to respond and innovate in terms of education systems to make it more stronger, but also to make it more equitable, which goes back to the idea of SDG 4. And we saw this, many actors, parents and teachers, intergenerational learning, as we said. However, they say that the innovation has shown what is possible when countries focus on the most effective and equitable approaches to close the learning gaps. But they say for all children. Again, it's like only children have to be learning in crisis. And so if we are to truly build back better, or even I would say build better, why is education again narrowed down to children? It's important, as we have argued today, that it's about lifelong learning systems that includes children to adults. And so I think a lot of good studies are coming out of the COVID crisis in education, but watch out. A lot of these are also very narrowly focused on children's education. In January 2020, I found this. I mean, this is a study of the USAID on resilience capacity of the education system. It's wonderful because when you start to say, I was talking about resilience as coping, adapting, and transforming, which is part of the frameworks, this is talking exactly about the education system. But when you start to look at this more closely, again, what are the blind spots in this? If we are to bring our discussion about resilience as learning, I think it's really important to be able to embed ALE and identify learners are not just students or youth. Schools have CLCs, communities, CSOs, and NGOs. So it's important to identify the institutions on the left side, okay, and the communities linked to adult learning more explicitly. The study that you did on the VNR will be very informative because we need to be able to look at this again, not just as resilience, as if the system were just about little blocks. But the system includes people. The system includes communities, and for us in ALE, it includes our very organizations that we work with. And so this is what I call for how do we therefore adapt these kinds of frameworks that USAID and the World Bank, but call attention to how the commitment of SDG 4 is to lifelong learning for all. And so what do I say? A few reminders at the end. Yes, we can conceptualize this, but I think what, Rajesh reminded us in terms of reimagining the new normal, often we will think of education, that it's the education of the people who are illiterate or low literacy, but what actually Rajesh says, it's re-education of the elites, the professionals, and the political and economic interest groups that might be necessary as a response to transform these resilient lifelong learning systems. A very recent study by the Education International actually calls us to be vigilant on how the global education industry is actually capitalizing on this crisis. Okay, we all are using technology. Okay, but this technology has become also private. Its own. Okay, and so how do we make sure that the government cannot shirk their responsibility to provide quality education for all, as enshrined again in the SDGs? Okay, and so we need to be vigilant. So this kind of resilience is what I say is resilience as transformation. And so to conclude, so I have said that one, we clearly have said that what COVID has created was to expose the inequalities. Two, we need to find ways to understand these inequalities and learn through the crisis rather than just learning about the crisis. Three, the SDGs provide a framework for us to be able to work and advocate with our own countries and governments. And fourth, that resilience is a very important concept, but we need to challenge the very concept of resilience, that it does not stay reactive. It's resilience also that is about transformation, that at the heart of this resilience is learning. But we also need to be very careful about efforts to be able to subvert, okay, the right to education, the right to free education for all. And we have tools, we have our experiences, we have our own studies to be able to draw from in terms of what we call as very clearly evidence-based advocacy. And so the challenge is here. I pose the challenge to everybody, and I end up with, again, most of us grew up with Paulo Freire. I would say ALE in the SDGs towards building better. We don't want to build back. Back has problems. We want to build better, resilient lifelong learning systems. We are sowing the seeds for transformation in times of uncertainty. And Freire says, in reflecting on how context shapes educational practice, described that the banking method emphasizes permanence and becomes reactionary, building back. On the other hand, a problem-posing education that accepts neither a well-behaved present or a predetermined future roots itself in the dynamic present and becomes revolutionary. This is more relevant now than ever as we celebrate, and as the International Council and our members, he will be celebrating his 100th birthday next year, September 19. And this is our chance to rally, to say that Freire continues to be relevant now more than ever. Because as I've always argued, what we want is resilience as transformative learning, not resilience. In terms of the way they say, it'll be fine. Don't worry, you're resilient. We need to challenge that, because otherwise, then we will go back. We will not build better, we will just build back. Thank you very much. On behalf of the International Council, I congratulate ASBE, and I invite you to the forum that we will have on Monday, where the International Council and ASBE join together and strategize how we move forward in terms of a particular platform that we will engage with Confintia 7. Maraming salamat. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, maraming salamat, Robbie. And what more can I say? But thank you for your excellent synthesis. And you have managed to weave together the discussions from the first session up to the end. And you also gave us some food for thought, resilience as learning. And of course, I think you agree, learning is also resilience. Okay, so now I would like, thank you, Robbie. And now I would like to call our ASBE's Secretary General, Maria Lourdes Almazan-Khan, to give us the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Over to you, Maria.
Thanks, Thea. Well, resilience seems to really be a great theme for this session. And certainly we have been very resilient, and I'm very thankful to all of you who have stayed on way over time for this webinar, for your resilience in sitting through very rich sets of discussions, even as you had to adjust your, for sure you had to adjust your schedules. I think colleagues, I was told to do a synthesis, but obviously there is no more time to do a synthesis, and Robbie did a magnificent job of synthesizing already. Mainly just to say a few closing comments before we end this session around a deep appreciation for the work that we do, a lot of the work, the good work that we heard in relation to ongoing ALE advocacy, even as the COVID pandemic has challenged our abilities to operate and has also continues to pose a major challenge which could erode the gains that we have already won in relation to securing a wider agenda for education. That includes not only children, but adults and youth as well. I think, colleagues, we should be, Robbie mentioned it, we should be mindful of succeeding platforms where we should advance these advocacies. There is Confintea, which is coming up. We should strategize well for this. But more closely, there is the Global Education Meeting, colleagues, which is coming up in October, where UNESCO will want to gather the different stakeholders, especially around SDG 4, so that there will be a more concerted attempt in order to address the education and lifelong learning challenges within this COVID context. And colleagues, the challenges in relation to how the agenda is being narrowed, how the issues related to financing are being used to narrow down this agenda even further are things that we should be attentive to as we participate in these forums. With that, I'd like to offer my thanks to all of the speakers who made very valuable comments in this webinar. In the order of their presentations, Johan from DVV, Anita Dige, who not only spoke, of course, here, but anchored the very valuable research around an analysis of VNRs through an A lens, the contributions of the coalitions to this report in terms of comments and in terms of individual studies, NCE India along with Nirantar for India, NCE Nepal, the Vietnam Association for EFA, and ENET Philippines, who presented these studies as well, represented by Kim An, by May Cinco, by Nupur, and by Ram Gaire. Thank you very much to the representatives from UNESCO, Katinka Weinberger, from Eric Mendoza of the Department of Education in the Philippines, from Dr. Rashahidi from the Ministry of Education in Malaysia, and of course from the International Council for Adult Education, its president, Jose Roberto Guevara. Nani, our president, continues to inspire with our work and her able steer of our organization, and our work on ALE across the years would never have been sustained if not for the ongoing support of DVV International in Germany. So colleagues, thank you to the facilitators who also anchored this, this work through not only the session, but in planning the session, Anita, Subrat, Thea, our technical support team, Jerome, Lei, and Meda, who has been assisting in information and communications work for this event, and colleagues in the Secretariat in Manila, to Aveline and other members of the ASBE staff. And finally, and most especially to all of you colleagues for participating in this webinar. We hope that it has been worth your while through the extra time, and certainly this will not be the last in our coming together to advance adult learning and education and the right to adult learning and education. Thank you, colleagues, and hope to see you also in the webinar tomorrow and in succeeding events of ASBE.
Thank you, and maybe we can have a photo. Just a quick photo before we leave. Our webinar is not complete without photos, so please open your video for those who are, inside the webinar.
Ready for photo.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. And yeah. Okay. Is it okay? We're finished. The photo.
No, I think some of them have not yet opened. So
okay.
Maybe I can just take one. Then.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We have a. Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.